Ooh, you're almost at 3K subs. We're at 2.6.
That's exciting.
That's pretty good.
That's exciting. That's encouraging. It's all the positive things.
There we go. I'm hopping in. Ooh, second person to give it a like. For those of you guys, Eric Canete is now live. He's large and in charge. Man, look at all those pages.
I've literally got to tell people that I'm live.
Look at all those fucking pages. I'm going to pop out your chat so I can see it more better.
I love the fact that Rob is here. Rob and I had a conversation, and I think maybe, obviously not today, but maybe next week I could bring Rob on and talk to him about his process. Mike, what do you think?
Sure. I'm full disclosure, I'm unfamiliar with Rob's work.
That's okay. I mean, that's the point, though, right?
Happy to brush up. Happy to brush up. Yeah.
I love hearing about people's about their processes, right? Not just. I think that's what's kind of interesting in learning. Rob's a writer for a book called Replicator. He's actually on his third book by now, crowdfunding it as we speak via Indiegogo. So, wow. I mean, that's I would say that's a successful project or IP if you're already on book 3.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So
yeah, congratulations. Congratulations. What's up, Pedrino? Hello, Mona. Mona says, well, Mona's talking about her intersex stuff. But what would you like to talk about today, Eric?
Mona's talking about intersex stuff. Well, first I'm going to try to tell people that I'm actually live, and then we can talk about whatever. Cool?
All right. Yes. Bernard Chang brought up something interesting yesterday. I'd like to touch on that. Oh, he brought up a few interesting things yesterday.
We'll totally get into that.
What a good guy, that Bernard Chang.
He really is.
You know, I respect him for I respect Bernard for getting on voice chat and kind of getting in the mix with us, knowing that we definitely wouldn't see eye to eye on a bunch of different points. But you know, he stood his ground and he made his case, and he was very, how do I phrase this? He had very tactful.
I think so too. Okay, here we go. All right, that should be enough of that.
All right, where'd you broadcast the alert to?
I went to Instagram, which then hooks up to my Facebook, and then I went to the other one, the Twitter.
Twitter.
Man, everything feels gross when you talk social media. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a necessary evil. I saw you posting yesterday like crazy, or day before.
Yeah.
Doing a burst fire. Getting some traction on some of your posts too.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's I think it's like you said, it's a necessary evil, but I wish there was a better way going about it, where it's a bit more efficient. You know what I mean? Like, let me say hi to everybody.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of us over here, so, which is good. Keep this as quiet and just you and me as possible. Let's go. Hello, Rob. Hello, Mr. Macadina-Cola. Hi, Mona. How are you? Pedrino, how are you? Overraker, how are you? Good evening. Look at that really, really small room. Look at my wrench doing the wrench things.
Look at that wrench working it out. We got Nolan, my sketchbook, 340 in here.
Yeah. Hello,
Overacre.
Nolan, good evening. How are you? Things are moving right along. Always a monster when you post, Eric. Thank you so much, Overraker. Yeah, some traction. I like that. It keeps me humble. Hello, Mr. John Amore.
John Amore, how are you?
We can start to, as people are walking in, you know.
Yeah. So should we?
Rob is right. He says, you know, the link in my description is wrong. It should be ATHENA info. Rob, if somebody goes to the website, the .com, the pop-up will come up anyway, so it'll take them right into that info page either way. But I think you're right. We could be more deliberate about making sure that it takes them directly to that thing that you're linking to for the sign up.
Right.
Appreciate that. By the way, congratulations on 40K, Rob. That's an amazing. What do you call it? That's amazing. What would you say?
Achievement, accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing achievement.
Yeah.
Congratulations, buddy. I'm super proud of you. I hope that your projects are moving right along. I know that there was a bit of hubbub in that community. I don't know if you guys can hear me. I know that there was a bit of hubbub in that community in regards to people who have yet to fulfill already starting brand new projects. That was a bit frowned down upon, so to speak.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and in specific, it was your boy Zach launching a brand new project that was, you know, still Jawbreakers related, right? It was like maybe it's one of the main characters in the book, and he launched another one before fulfilling. Depending on how you look at the situation, you're either looking at his track record holistically, which is late on a handful of things, but most specifically 2 books, right? Or you look at it specifically, in which case you say there's 2 books that have been late, one of which has been a year late.
And that's Expendables? Is that the one?
Expendables, yeah. And I don't know the new. I mean, it's all his business to not say why it's late. Obviously, that he handles that. But the point is, people were reacting unfavorably to the idea that why are you launching a book before these things have been fulfilled? We don't feel comfortable backing another one of your projects until we feel like these things have been cleared off the ledger. You know. Anyway. That's his business, you know. I'm not from my perspective, that's one of the reasons why I'm so incredibly paranoid about launching anything until I'm close to, if not 100% close to done, I am right around the corner of finishing, you know. And only because I don't know, I don't have the same sort of audience equity that Meyer has. You know what I mean? Like, he has sort of this built-in audience that came from a level of notoriety because he was one of the figureheads of that movement, and so that's wonderful for him. So, but that comes with a certain business or you know, audience cachet, right? They'll back him. I think there's a percentage of them that will back him no matter what, right? But I don't have that. I don't have that audience cachet, at least not in the similar way as he does. So I'm speaking for myself. I'm incredibly paranoid about, you know, being late, not being able to deliver. And one of the things that and as you know this already, Mike, one of the things I'm really doing to help stack the deck in my favor is to have this thing done. You know, because I think that's one of the biggest holdups is just the art, right? Like. To use Meyer as an example, he can write like 4 books, you know, in a year, but it still takes X amount of months for the writer, or excuse me, for the artist to generate the art so that he can release it to his backers, right? That's the gate, which is we generate X amount of pages for the project in order to get audience interest, and then from there they get to work, and who knows how long that takes. Not taking into account any sort of like life stuff that you have to hurdle in the midst of all of that. You compound that by X amount of projects, it really does have a tendency to add up. And in a way, and I think this is one of the other points that people were making, was that it adds to the erosion of trust, if that makes any sense. right?
Yeah. No, I understand. I think if listen, if I had to wait over a year for a Kickstarter to be delivered, I think I'd be concerned,
Yeah,
and I
for
think
sure.
it's going to vary from person to person. So I
Sure.
might be concerned, but be enough of a fan, or assured enough due to his previous track record that hey, listen, a little late, willing to give him the benefit of the doubt,
Mm,
and support more work, knowing that eventually I know I'm going to get the book. It's just going to take some time.
mm, mm,
But it depends on the person. The replicator says, "I know someone I know has $1,000 invested in his campaign."
mm, mm. Rob says we got Keone and Pitt yesterday, so we are happy. I'm gonna assume that by we it means the audience, the Comicsgate audience, who are excited about the idea that Dale Keone is being published by All Caps, which is Ethan Van Sciver's company. I'm excited for them. I'm excited. I mean, I'm a Dale Keone fan. I'm a fan of his art, so I'm glad that we are going to get more Dale Keone comics. I'm excited for him. Overricker asks, you think that's an image era style stigma of superstar artists like what, getting bored and moving on before finishing something? I'm not exactly sure if that's a one-to-one analogy to what's happening. I think, who said it best? I was hanging out in somebody's chat the other day, listening in on the sort of the concerns, right? Maybe even the gripes, and they were saying how, and it was a thing that they pulled from Ethan's stream. They were saying how Zach has so many ideas, but he exhibits a level of impulsiveness that may be detrimental to that where they may contribute to that erosion of customer trust. Who knows? Ultimately, that's his business. I wouldn't conduct myself that way, but I'm not him. Daniel, how are you?
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. Andrew Wyatt, how are you? I think that's a wanted point of view. Most customers are buying from him, aren't buying from LCS, so they are getting anxious. No books means no content. 100%. I see your perspective. I agree with it. Saludos desde Mexico. Hello. How are you? Thank you for being here. I'm not familiar with Keone. What books would someone recommend? You can find the most recent thing that he's done, well, not the most recent thing, but the thing that he had left mainstream comics for to go into Image to publish his own creator-owned IP is a book called Pit, and that was a little while ago. So he may be getting back to that. Rob can confirm. Has the Kickstarter era changed any of that hesitation? I've backed stuff from folks that takes 2 years to show up, who are not as the same name or skill as Eric. And that's the thing, and Kickstarter, crowdfunding in general, I think has a tendency to get into that space of promising something and then falling behind for whatever reason. Often when it comes to technology, you never know how the R&D behind the technology, and obviously the fabrication of everything takes forever. You can never understand where the supply chain sort of conks out on you. So that may be an issue. But in regards to comics and publishing in general, I don't think that it should ever happen. Especially if you want to, if you want your customer base to consider you a serious publisher who can deliver. Right? There's only so many times that you'll say, "Hey, I'm late," before somebody goes like, "Geez." And I think here's something weird, Mike. You tell me what you think of this, okay?
Break it down.
Because he is, the word I'm going to use is a figurehead, right? Because he is such a figurehead in that community, and by the way, this is not something that he took on in himself. It's sort of like imbued upon him. So fair, not fair, you decide, right? Because of the fact that he is a figurehead of that community, when he underperforms, it reflects poorly going outward from him towards the other creators who are also trying to do something similar. Does that make sense?
I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. because for I'm assuming for at least some people, he or Ethan might be their first foray, because those are two of some of the biggest names
Mm,
in CG or just indie comics
mm,
in
mm,
general of late.
mm.
Uh, there's a high probability that they might be their first toe dip in the pool of indie campaigns. And if they're now feeling scorned,
Yeah,
because again, it's different, man. It's not the same as just regular comics
yeah.
or graphic novels or whatever you might get from your local comic book store. So this might leave a bad taste in some people's mouths, man.
Mm,
It might it might be overwhelming. It might be a little detrimental to the overall industry.
right. Yeah, I don't mean I don't know if there's a clean and verifiable objective way to track something like that. People are operating primarily on feelings. Now, a part of me, goes back to that, that tenet that that I consistently quote you about, which is whatever X eats doesn't make me shit,
Yes.
Like, I don't care, that's his business. Let them
Right.
conduct
Right.
themselves. So ultimately, there's no way for me to be like, oh man, I'm in the orbit of that and blah blah blah. Like, I don't care, right? I think what this breaks down to is what Rob is talking about in chat, which is people don't mind lateness so much. They don't like no updates and launching multiple campaigns while others are fulfilled. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, what the heck, dude?
Ditto.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, man, I could see people being upset,
Phil
especially
Net
if
says,
you.
"Go ahead, dude."
Oh, go on.
I was just saying,
No, well,
Phil Net says, Arc Athena looks incredible. I've been trying to steal your perspective design for 20 years and failed. Very kind, I think. Go to a more reasonable, reliable source, I would say. I cut you off, Mike. Go ahead.
no. Replicator said he knows somebody who invested $1,000
Yeah.
into.
Woo.
That is a for me especially, not not a small sum. Mona, that's not a small sum.
Yeah.
So yeah, shit, man. If I gave $1,000 for a product that it's over a year old and you know not on the horizon anytime soon,
Yeah.
I'd be upset.
Yeah. But again, I can't inform on it. I've yet to launch a campaign for myself, so I don't know that the challenges of it, right? Like, I've never had to do it before. So it's almost like, a pet peeve of mine is when we start talking about movies and people are like, oh man, it could be so much better if they did it like this and this. I'm like, motherfucker, you've never shot a movie. So
Right,
like,
right.
I just shut up about it. But I understand
Yes.
people's perspective. I understand people's concerns and trepidation, however you want to describe it. That was an interesting. That was an interesting thing to listen in on, because it wasn't coming from dum-dums like you and me, Mike. It was coming from people who
Yeah.
are his actual backers, the people who actually do more work in regards to positive word of mouth. That's a huge deal. I don't know the dollar value that can go behind that, right? Like, when people are advocates for your work, that they apostolize for your work. That's huge, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Listen, man. Especially if you're a smaller, independent creator.
For sure.
Every single one of the members of your community, especially those, who put their money where their mouth is. Having somebody give you that vote of confidence with their hard-earned money,
Yeah,
that is no small deal, man.
for sure.
That means a lot.
For sure.
So yeah.
Cultivating
Hello, Chauncey.
that relationship takes a lot of energy. Building that trust, even more energy. And I think, like, it doesn't take much for that trust to erode, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you could build up a cache of goodwill, but that'll only take you so far.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? Typically, what I do at the beginning part of the show is show off the pages that I've been working on, just so it gives people a preview of what they are in for. But most importantly, quite selfishly, it keeps me accountable to potential people who may end up supporting my work. So let me put this image away. I was just inking some
Yeah,
of this trading card art.
whip 'em out.
Yeah, stand by. Okay, here we go. So to give you guys context on what I did this week, after going through each of the 4 pages that were quote unquote done in as far as the intended amount of pages per issue, there was a conversation with the printers that said each signature for the hardcovers would be optimized by way of expense if I go all the way to 48 pages. Now, some of the issues would be 5 shy of that, as many as 8 pages shy of that, right? Each signature is, if you take a look at the binding of the book, you can tell how the pages are folded and stitched together and ultimately bound together for the hardcover. That's called a signature, that little binding area. So to optimize for the expense of it, again, ideally it's in 8-page increments, 4-page increments. And so we found an opportunity, and by we I mean me and Joe Fulton, who is the editor for ATHENA. He was going through the scripts for the first 4 issues. He said, "Hey, Eric, I understand the themes that you're going for. I understand the relationships that you're trying to build, but unfortunately, it's a little light, right?" And I said, "Great, that's an amazing piece of feedback. Thank you so much for that. Let me now go back into each issue and shore that up by adding more pages that don't seem like they're shoehorned in there." So I think that's the part that was the most challenging, was finding the right opportunity within each issue so it doesn't seem like I'm just like slapping pages in there to fulfill 48 pages worth of for the signatures, right? And so that was super challenging. That was super challenging for me. But luckily, there were enough. There was opportune areas where I believe that I could inject the necessary story elements narratively, and then also fulfill 48 pages for that signature. So this week I was working on issue 3. Issue 3, by the time I was all done with it, issue 3, by the time I was all done with it, was only 41. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, it was closer to 41. And I wanted it to be 48. I ended up doing 8 extra pages to explain the relationship between the 2 leads for ATHENA and Poseidon. And so I'm going to walk you through those pages now. You guys tell me if you need me to slow down in chat. By the way, chat, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer any and all of them.
I like that blur effect.
That manga blur effect. Andrew White says lateness can only fly but a few times. He's a former Marine. Late once happens, twice is a trend, 3 times is a problem, and that's how the military views it. Right on. I can see that. I get things happen, but a year late, yeah, I get you. I sympathize. I got 99 problems, but spending $1,000 on a comic ain't one, according to Overraker. I get it. Chauncey Blakey, hello, how are you? Muttman, good conversation. Love the art, Eric. Thank you so much for that. That's very, very kind of you. Love this part of the show. Only 8 pages in a week. Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thank you. How many virgins did you sacrifice? Whoa.
Oh, my.
Yeah, how many virgins did you sacrifice to draw 8 pages in a week? What in the heck? Never slow down. Keep that awesome work coming. Thank you so much, Page 1. How are you, man? Good seeing you here. Okay, let me...
There's black borders.
Yeah, there is this scene in ATHENA 3 in which they are being interrogated. So there's being interrogated by the one of the henchmen for the antagonist, and they're digging into the lead for Poseidon, into his brain, into his memory. So these things help to signify that sort of invasion of his mind, right?
Oh, gotcha.
You guys see that all right? Fuck, man, these were so laborious to draw, but also the end product I am so proud of. I'm so happy with. And it shows, like, I remember when Joe was going through the script, one of the key things that he asked me was like, yeah, Eric, do we have an understanding of when this stuff happened? You know, do you have a point of reference as to where this was in their history? And I was like, what a great fucking note, you know? Because he's looking at it strictly from the audience's perspective, you know? He's looking at it from like, if I'm reading this, is this clear to me when this is happening, you know? And I was like, great note. Let's go address it. How do we address it so it seems seamless, so it seems natural and organic, you know?
Oh, somebody wants to know, does the writing happen for you first before the visuals or vice versa?
It happens before. What I have a loose idea of what the dialogue will be, right? And you can tell, like, I don't have my top-down camera where I jot the notes down on the printed thumbnails. I've always wanted to do this scene, Mike, where it's like, you know, you do the ghost imaging as the character does like an action flip.
Yeah, dude, I've seen that done a bunch of times with the Daredevil, Nightwing, Spider-Man.
Yeah. Love that. I saw it first on like X-Men back in the day, and I think it was like Nightcrawler doing super agile stuff. And I had an opportunity to do it for these additional pages that I put in, you know.
Oh, that's fucking great. You pulled it off, man.
Thanks, man. I think we're coming up on that one page that I showed our sled gang chat, where I'm like, fuck, this took forever to draw, you know?
Yes. Hollow deck.
Yeah.
These are fun, man. Is that an Asian woman?
Is that an Asian woman? No, the it's funny how when I first sent out the 3D print to the sculptor, right, who was recommended by our good friend John Amore, they said, who do you see as the as an analog for this character, like features wise, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, Rihanna.
Oh yeah. I fucking see that now.
And they sculpted it close to Rihanna's features, you know. And we were talking to Bernard Chang about this yesterday. How it's not in my nature to simply infuse diversity into my work, because I feel like it's my personal responsibility to do so as a person of color, as a minority, you know.
Right.
That's not in me. Like I don't take that responsibility on for myself. I ultimately what motivates me to put any person of color or any sort of like character development into the story is if it fits my narrative. You know what I mean? Like if it makes sense to have X as the motivation for that. So in this case, when I'm thinking about like social media superheroes, you know, as they're celebrated by the globe, right? As like, oh my gosh, these guys are not only, you know, not only like superstars, but also super powered superstars. My thoughts immediately went like, well, who is that, you know? So the first thought behind ATHENA was Beyonce, right? Like to imagine if you smash Beyonce and Rihanna together, right? From a social media star right? From a superstar, like
Or
everybody around the world would understand who they are. That's why I was kind of like, okay, so we'll give we'll pay tribute to those two women, and somewhere in there infuse them with Rihanna. I think it's funny how I spoke to my wife about that character choice, to say like, oh yeah, this is Rihanna, and she's like, yeah, that's typically your type of woman, and I'm like, what do you mean, And she's
oh my,
like eyes far apart, and I was like, oh yeah,
yeah,
because that's how I fucking draw. That's how I fucking draw people. It's like people with eyes far apart, and it makes sense for Rihanna's in
yeah,
Rihanna's for
man,
Rihanna's sake.
fucking Queen's Gambit style.
Yeah, that's the other one. I take a look at that woman and I'm like, I'm ensorcelled. I'm entranced. I could
Hmm.
hide just by standing directly in front of her, right between that empty gap between her eyes. Anyway, we're clearly approaching the that page that I was talking to you guys about. So
Oh, somebody wants. Oh,
there's the hologram scene
just.
link.
Oh yes, yes, yes. My favorite.
Okay. You find
My
stuff like
favorite
your
title.
Transformers and G.I. Joe posts bring more feedback on the socials. Also, does that translate into any interest from people that have those licenses? Can they even afford? No. So to answer that last question, typically, so the last time I did anything GI Joe related, it strictly was not for the money. It was because a good friend of mine, editor at IDW, a fellow by the name of, why is my brain Mark? Yeah, it's Mark, right? So Mark Irwin, who is a former, I think he still is an inker. Actually, he was one of the guys that inked me back in the day, while I was working at Wildstorm. Mark is an editor over there now, more specifically for the GI Joe line. And an opportunity came up, and I reached out to him and said, "Hey, Mark, I kind of want to start reintroducing my name into the mainstream comic book consciousness. Do you think you can do me a favor by, if there's a cover for me to do, because that's all I could really commit to at the time, is there a way that I can do a cover for you?" And luckily he said yes. The pay wasn't anything, I wasn't looking at it from like, oh, they should compensate me for my time. It was more like Mark did me a favor. Mark was my friend, and I wasn't about to say, "Oh yeah, by the way, on top of me asking you to give me cover work, can you please, you know, bump up my rate by something that you guys don't pay anybody, So to answer your question, no, they can't afford me. Especially because the metric that I often use when I'm taking on work that is not related to ATHENA, right, is, am I willing to step away from ATHENA in order to do this thing? And 10 times out of 10, that's a no, 10 times out of 10, I'm like, there's nothing that'll take me away. Just as recently, somebody at DC reached out to me and asked me if I can do a cover for them. And I said yes, but this is how I really, it is not only because I know that's what my work is worth, but also because I wanted to stop this trend of like, well, here's what we typically offer cover artists. I'm like, that's great, but that's not what I want,
Right.
So I wanted to reestablish I think you get so much out of life just by asking, rather than just like holding your hand out and saying like, yeah, I'll take whatever you can give me, So for me,
Yeah.
I'm
No.
like, I wasn't about to just sit there and be like, yeah, no, I'll take your typical cover rate that you're probably going to use my art, multiple times in order to hype your book, put it out into, like, you're not only just using it for the cover, you're also going to be using it for advertising. You're also going to be using it for like to bring awareness to your brand and yada 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 yada. I'm like, nope, I'm going to charge you an arm and a leg, and if you say yes, cool, I'll do it. But if not, thank you very much.
Good for you.
Yeah. So here's
Yeah.
that, what do you call it, scene? That danger room / hologram scene, which I really loved rendering.
That's a good. That's a good life lesson. Know your worth. go out and get your worth.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's easier when I'm talking with friends about like what my rate would be, because I'm just kind of like, oh, I'm doing it because we're pals. Yeah, sure, I expect you to pay me, but I'm not gonna charge you the I'm not gonna charge you what I would charge somebody like DC or Marvel. You know, like just because that's what you've just because that's what the mainstream has been historically paying people, doesn't mean I'll continue to be like, oh really, cool. Then I guess that's what you should pay me too. Fuck that.
Yeah, no. No, the pay with this, when you put the page rates into account with everything else, abysmal.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this holodeck though.
Yeah, dude, that freaking took forever. The more I zoom in, the more tired I become.
I love it. I love the perspective of it. I love the grandiosity. I even love the effect where it looks like it's, the illusion is dissipating.
Oh yeah, up here, yeah.
Yeah.
That took forever. Just the idea behind it took forever. Rendering it. So you come up with that scene, right? You're like, oh right, it's that scene in when you're reading Claremont X-Men where they're done in the danger room and everything starts to turn off, or in your case, Mike, because you're a Star Trek guy, you're like, oh yeah, this is that holodeck scene where things become that gridded box room, And you're like, okay, somewhere in there is the idea. Somewhere in there is like, ooh, I can't wait to draw that. But then you draw it and you're like, fuck, how do I render that? Because you're gonna have to render it, right? And so that took forever to experiment with. Really took forever to experiment with.
Well, I want to say, man, listen, I'm not one to blow smoke up your buttocks, but I think you really fucking nailed this one.
Thanks, buddy. And it happened, like, it was so much work for the one panel, like, okay, we're fucking moving on to the next 20 other panels hereafter, Overraker said Mark is a good dude. I'm guessing you're talking about Mark Irwin. Yeah, for sure. Really, really good guy. Really good head on his shoulders. Maintains good relationships with people. Protects his artists. So that's really freaking awesome. So how do you develop character flaws, moral struggle, internal conflict? How do you look to the ground? The characters they become, so they overcome being too perfect? What a great fucking question. It's something that, Andrew, that's something that I struggled with so much in developing characters, right?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one.
Yeah, in this particular case, how do I best put it, right? In the case of ATHENA, especially in regards to Divana, the lead for ATHENA, you humanize them by giving them flaws that people can understand, and sometimes people can relate to it, right? But it needs, like we were talking about this with Dave Peterson a couple weeks back, right? You give them flaws that people say are like, oh, they're relatable, right? And I'm like, well, I don't necessarily believe in that. I mean, that they can, absolutely. But there are times when you just have to understand the character, why they feel like they are lesser than, they're incapable of, and then the armor that people put up in order to try to overcompensate for that feeling of being less than, right? Being incompetent, being undeserving, all those little idiosyncratic things that make people human, right? So you set that up in front of them, and then you consistently reinforce that throughout the story so that it helps to highlight it not just in the one scene, and you say to your audience, see, this character is imperfect because these are their flaws. You then reinforce that by saying, here is the flaw, you introduce that flaw, and here's how it impacts their personal relationship, their professional life. The decision making that they do throughout the series is influenced, if not led, by this specific flaw. And from there, you give them the arc. And you contrast that next to somebody who doesn't have that flaw, the idealized version, but they themselves are also flawed, but not because of that personal character trait. You contrast them next to somebody who is the idealized version of the main character's point of view, to go like, oh fuck, there's the person that I'm supposed to be. Like, I would love to be like that person, And I think a lot of modern comics miss those opportunities. They just introduce the idea of like, I'm trying to look for the flaw of main characters. And I remember talking to Bernard Chang yesterday about this in regards to what you should strive for in the first issue, and he didn't necessarily agree with it. I respect him. He was saying like, I need to understand the character in the first issue, right? I need to understand what they're struggling with in the first issue, and he didn't agree with that. And I go like, because at that point, that's the hook. We could talk about this in the Save the Cat, in the Save the Cat concept, right? Like, that's the hook of me understanding whether or not I'm going to root for this character. You see what I mean? Like, that's how you hook people, right? Like, yeah,
dude, I think that was it for like the longest time, man. In TV specifically, back in the day, you had a pilot, and the pilot was everything. That was your one fucking shot. So you made it count.
Yep.
These days, because of Netflix and other streaming services, it's like, all right, here, 13 episode arc. So shit doesn't get good sometimes. We're like, how often do you hear somebody talk about TV like, I watched the first episode, it's like, well, give it 3 episodes, give it at least 4 episodes. It's like, well, what the fuck, man? You're the pilot, dude. You got one shot. Give it to me. Yeah, it's the same thing in comic books.
Right. So like, there's a lot of things that go into that first episode, because I know it's comics, but I often think episodically, So like, there's a lot of things that need to happen in that first episode, and each of those things are like, each book, at least for me, are 3-act structures. Like, you establish character in the reality of the world that they live in. Some people call that world building. That's not always 100% accurate, because if you're dealing with like real world stuff, there's not much world building going on there. But let's say if you deal in a fantasy setting, that's the kind of stuff that you establish in the first issue, right? Hints of that. You don't necessarily have to lean into it in the first issue, but that I need to understand what that world is comprised, what the world is comprised of, right? How does it impact your character based on the like writers call it like a core hurt? Does that make sense, Mike?
Yes. Oh, like, yeah. Sure.
Right, like the core thing that is, like the thing that hurts them the most, and the thing that they're going to eventually overcome.
The flaw.
Like, yeah. Some people call it the flaw, but sometimes it's a wronging. Sometimes it's like in the case of the girl's motivation in True Grit, right? Her flaw, her hurt is the murder of her father. That's the hurt.
Her father, yeah.
That's not necessarily a character
avenging
flaw,
Yeah, no.
So,
although it can be.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They're myopic enough.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's not necessarily. They can be mutually exclusive.
Yes,
I get it.
Yes. But so to simplify, rather than saying like, hey, their character flaw, I think it's better to broaden it to say like, what does that hurt?
Yes.
It can be emotional, right? It can be psychological, but sometimes it can be physical. I don't think. There's a handful of comics that I want to be able to pick on, to be like, I read that comic and none of that is there. None of that. You just introduced me to nuances of those characters, but there's no what's driving them, Like I don't understand any. So that took a while to develop. So to answer Andrew Wyatt's question 10 minutes ago, it's really establishing that core hurt, and how the world impacts that, and how they see the world because of that, right? And you build them out of that. You take the time to contrast it to everything around them, to compare it to everything around them, and that to me sometimes leads to a lot of good answers as to how they act in the book. Like sometimes there's no, like one of the questions is like, how do I know if I'm being true to the character? If you have that core hurt, sometimes that answers it for you. Like, oh, they would never act that way,
Right. Yeah, of course.
Rob says there can only be good money in comics if you do it yourself. I think he's reacting to like me asking for a Patreon. Like, I know, like, it really bothered me because I don't remember if they actually even told me the page rate. I was just upfront, and I said it's going to be this much for me to do a cover for you, right? And the reason why I say that is because nobody can really tell in what capacity a cover is going to be used. Let me give you an example. Do you know that it's iconic at this point, right? Do you remember that Joker face that Jock drew with a bunch of bats that comprised like Joker's head,
Oh my God, yes, dude,
right?
that was everywhere on IMAX
Fucking
posters. Fucking
fucking
dude,
everywhere.
yeah,
It was everywhere. It was in
everywhere.
clothes. It was on underwear. It was on sheets. It was like, it was on
Yeah.
everywhere, right? Like, and Jock got $0 for that, right? Like
Oh
he
my
got his rate.
God, yeah.
He got his
He got his
rate, and
rate.
then they took that and they said, okay, well, we're going to turn it into this. Now, I'm not saying that that's broken, because within the contract of that, you do release it to them to say,
Yeah.
hey, you can use this in whatever capacity. After I release it to you, you own this piece of art. You can use it in whatever capacity that you need to. Makes total sense. I'm not railing against that, right? But I'm also stacking the deck in my favor, because I'm going to say, like, I don't know in what capacity you're going to end up using this for, how it's going to catapult and elevate awareness for your project, but I'm going to get paid up front. I don't want anything on the back end, but you're going to pay me what I believe this potentially could be worth,
Yes. That's fair.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to try to catch up with chat really, really quick.
Jump in there. Oh, I see Toy Galaxy Danny's here.
Dan, how are you, man? Who are some new artists, especially folks who popped off on socials that I like? There's a guy, and I call him a kid because everybody's a kid to me, but I'm gonna bring Torrin in, Torrin Clark, who's doing a lot of covers for Marvel right now. He finally got a foothold into getting mainstream work. He's underwater deadline. Well, I don't want to say underwater, but he's really behind deadline wise. But I really wanted to talk to him about his process. Oh gosh, what is Torrin's Instagram?
I'm actually not familiar.
You don't know Torrin's work? Holy crap!
I don't think I know Torrin's work.
Muaadib. Muaadib. Instagram.com.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd known that.
Yes.
I'd become aware of his work, a while ago. Actually, I think we actually had a very, very short, truncated conversation at New York Comic Con one year. And I knew that he was trying to he was already at the cusp of breaking in, and finally he got a foothold, and now he's getting a ton of like cover work, alternate cover work, or main cover work, because there's A and B and C cover work. I think he's actually getting the main cover for a lot of different things. I'm so incredibly proud of him. But here's the guy that I look at, I'm like, fuck man, that guy can freaking draw, right? As far as like panel to panel stuff, who was I looking at the other day where I was like, God damn, that guy can draw sequential art. I can't remember. Instagram to me just like like the nature of social media turns me into a fucking barfly where my attention span is so very short.
Yeah, no, like I've been following this guy for a few years now, and you're like, Torrin, and I'm like, no clue. I'm like, oh yeah, Muaadib. Yeah. Now that guy I know.
Yeah. Well, he said sometime in mid-July, when his deadlines are a little bit less oppressive, he'll come by and hang out with us. So get your butt ready. John Amore says that Danger Room page ain't bad. Oh, thanks, John Amore. I'm glad that you approve. Cryptic Comics says that panel is amazing. Thank you so much. That first panel is awesome, no doubt. Thank you so much, Toy Galaxy Dan. How are you, man? Folks, if you're not already a subscriber, if not a patron, to my good friend Dan Larson, please go do so now. You can go to youtube.com/Toy Galaxy. Therein you can find these amazing retrospectives on either animated shows and at one point toys, but I think he's moved that onto his second channel, Toy Galaxy 2. I just found out that Dan from time to time streams video games on Twitch, which is really, really awesome. He has a Patreon available if you'd like to support his content, which I think he's doing exclusively now. Congratulations to him and producer Greg. Very, very proud to call him my friend. So high five.
Does he have an OnlyFans?
Does he have an OnlyFans? Yes, but he limits it to only about 3 people. I am one of the 3, so I've seen the goods.
Oh man, oh boy.
Makes sense to establish the core hurt in the first issue. What did Bernard say in contrast? He didn't say anything in contrast. He just didn't. he didn't think that it was the only way, and if that is the case, then I would agree with him, right? But I just think that in order to hook your audience, you really need to give your readers a clear understanding of why we should care with these people, or at the very least, have an understanding of what motivates those characters. Without that, you're like, okay, let me go do issue 2 in a comic and spend another $6 and blah blah blah. Like, you waste that opportunity. That's a wasted opportunity in my perspective. Thanks us doing some Maya homework while I watch. Thank you for being here. I hope that myself and Michael DiNicola aren't too distracting while you're doing your homework. Again, thanks for being here. You're aiming to distract people?
I'm trying to distract them. Hey.
Yeah. Stop doing your homework.
Stop that.
Fangs, stop doing your homework. Andrew White says, flaws and principles are great to play with. Principles can be challenged. Flaws are things that beg to be exposed and exploited from when the hero then get to deal with. God, good luck. It was it's for me, because I'm not inherently an experienced writer. It took a little while to understand how to best highlight my character's hurt, and then how that motivates them into growth X amount of issues later. Such a great image. Thank you so much, Overrager. Daryl Austin says, off topic, but are you taking questions regarding art technique? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't do enough drawing while I stream, so any questions in regards to me being able to explain how I approach things technique-wise, I'd love to be able to do that for you.
Oh, hey, you know it's a good time to remind people of?
Yeah.
We just chose the winner for last month's giveaway.
Yes, we did. So to give context to what Mike is talking about, at the end of every month, if you have not already signed up for my newsletter, you can do so now. ericcanete.com/arc-athena-info. In there is the newsletter sign up. At the end of every month, June just passed, so we managed to give away one of those busts. Unfortunately, I cleaned my office and took the bust elsewhere, so I would be showing it off by now. But there is a picture of the bust in there, and we give it away to people as a thank you to the potential supporters of ATHENA as a project, ATHENA as a campaign. We just gave one out, but full disclosure, the first person, Mike, that we reached out to, and we give people about 48 hours to get back to us in regards. Yeah, absolutely. We give people about 48 hours to get back to us in regards to a forwarding address where we can ship those busts to. They never got back to us. So by our own rules, we had to quote unquote re-roll and said, okay, you are, we found somebody else. And it was really awesome. Don't you think, Mike, that they were like, dude, I never thought that I would get it, but I'm so excited to do it. Congratulations on your project. It was so encouraging and positive.
A complete 180. The first dude vanished. Nothing. Yeah. We're like 2 days. You're like, sent a few messages.
Yep.
Hey, you won. Congratulations. But are you there? No.
Yep.
And this guy was like right away, a few hours after the email. Oh my God, I can't believe I won. This is so exciting.
It was really super positive. Yeah. Here's my info. Yeah. Be happy to promote it. Be happy to
use my Twitter handle.
Yep. Yeah, so that was really great. That's on their way out to them, and if they're listening, if they manage to listen to this stream later on, thank you so much for your support. We are so genuinely appreciative of it. So thank you.
Love it.
Overworker says, I met him like 5 years ago. Just in the last year, homie has been getting so much A work. His light source skill is insane. It is. He's I would think, one of those guys that I love seeing super talented people turn the corner, not just craft-wise, but also professionally, where people finally go like, crap, he's really, really good. We better give him as much work as we can possibly afford, Or set an alarm, pop into our Twitch ever since once in a while you beat me to it. Yeah, like, what do you call it? Dan streams, I think, once that's scheduled and another one that's a bit more impromptu, and I managed to miss it every single freaking time,
Is it a hot tub stream?
It is a hot tub stream. Yep, 100%. That's how come Dan. That's how come Dan rakes in the bucks, dude.
Yeah, he's in there with a Ninja Turtle figurine set, dude. He's got the turtle van, Master Splinter's in there, Shredder. Bebop, Rocksteady, all of
That's
them.
it. That's it. That's it. And whenever he can, Dan writes the names of his most current donator onto his body.
Yeah, do it.
Okay.
He calls it the toy tub stream.
It is. The Toy Galaxy Tub Stream. Oh my god, I wish I knew that before. I've been pestering Demon Puppy Brett Booth on my Myth Chasers book. Would be my first comic I know of with a libertarian bent. Right on. Right on. How much planning actually goes into these pages? It looks like you're using Procreate. How do you like using it? Also, it's pronounced Canete. Canete. Right on. The answer is, how much planning? I think plenty of planning. I don't know, just the right amount of planning. Let's see. This is what this page looks like when it's in its rough form, right? I can show you what the page looks like. Here, this is what it looks like when it's roughed in. I've turned down the opacity, obviously, so when I start inking, it doesn't get in the way. But that's as clean, quote unquote, as I draw the pencils, the pencil stage or the rough stage, and then I get straight to inking. Now, keep in mind the nature of the digital medium allows me to add as many layers until I get that thing right, whatever it is that I'm rendering. So in the case of this first panel, when I was trying to figure out exactly what the end product ultimately ended up looking like, there was a couple of experimental layers that I eventually just ended up throwing away until I landed on the rendering that I considered to be the final shippable version. So it looks like this. Daryl Austin is asking, Iraq, just wondering about your process for constructing circle ellipses in perspective. As a noob, I find that it looks off even when using it as a square as a base with all the center lines. Yeah, the reason why I think some people, and this is hard to teach because you obviously need to have a foundational understanding of the premise of why, how circles work, right? And I can kind of walk you through it really quickly. So typically, when you have something in perspective, God, it's been a while since I've had to explain like how ellipses work when they're in perspective. It's a giant pain in the butt. So assuming that this is a perfect square, which I already know for sure that it is not, right? Each corner, if you bisect the square using the corners, right, you land in the center point of that square, correct? This is a 3-point perspective. This is a 3-point angle. I just know just based on the really acute way the perspective is going away from us, right? So like this is going to be effectively the y-axis of your circle, right? Each side of your circle is going to touch the outermost sides of your square. So if this is the ellipse, that circle now turns into ellipse naturally, right? If I hold it down like that, it turns into there's a function on Procreate in which I can just hold it down and it turns into a circle, right? Look at that. Like I can draw like the jankiest line like this, and then I go like it turns into an ellipse, right?
Love it.
Anyway,
love that.
Right, and from there, right, using the perspective as it goes away from us, all right, this 3-point perspective into this down shot, right? What starts to happen, like what people have a tendency to do is to take this same ellipse and just like multiply it and drag it down, which is wrong, right? Because the perspective has changed, right? So assuming for a minute, like you want to draw a cylinder, the perspective down here is so much more wide than the perspective up here. Does that make sense? So what you would do then is draw this box instead. So you can then remeasure based on the perspective that's going away from you in this 3-point down shot. Bisect the corners again, and now you found the center point. Conceptually, it would line up with this center point up here, right, and the circle above. And then now you just draw the ellipse touching the walls of that box, right, and draw the perspective line through. So this is what it would look like. Does this make sense? I think that's where people mess up a lot, is that they just assume that the ellipses are the same on each side when technically perspective changes, if that makes any sense.
Pay attention to your z-axis. If you don't know what the z-axis is, then you got more learning to do about perspective.
And that's so okay. So that's the technical version, right? Really, really, that's the technical version.
Now tell me how you don't do that.
Yeah, I don't do any of that. I have an understanding of what that is because sometimes reality is such a massive constraint to convince the audience the correct feeling of what you're trying to communicate, right? I know that's a weird thing to say. Some people who are at the beginning part of their journey often go to the technical because it gives them a comfortable place to land in, right? Like, hey, that looks right. Or excuse me, technically that's right, but it looks wrong. Do you know where I'm coming from? And as
Yes.
as artists, depending on where you are in your journey, in your learning, all you have is the technical, and that feels really, really good to you because you're able to fall back and go like, wow, this is a 3-point perspective, it's a down shot, the ellipse up here would probably be everything that I just explained to you right now. But sometimes you have to push and cheat that perspective in order to make it feel correctly. And here's the reason why. The technicality of plotting of perspective, right? Like, oh yeah, okay, so it goes away into the z-axis this way, the y-axis this way, and then like the x-axis this way. Like all of that plotting makes sense when it comes to understanding it from a technical standpoint. The thing that it does not take into account is the experience of what your eyeball sees when you experience the world. It rarely holds on to those technical nuance because when you're looking at things, your eye is moving. It's like jittering so fast that it's filling in, it's like stitching in so much information. And that's why when you're beholden to a 3-point perspective, from time to time, it doesn't look right. Right? Because here's one that fucks up that concept, right? When you're looking up like this, and then suddenly you pan your head down like this, not even moving your eyeballs, or you just like look down, all of that suddenly just starts to warp, right? All of that now starts to move in a very dynamic way. And that's something that's hard to teach and more importantly, hard to capture. Dan says, I'm playing Rocket League while listening, so I can't reply quickly. Great hearing Mike on the show. Feels like the old stream. Listen to that, Mike. Feels like old time.
Dan remembers.
Dan remembers. Dan's a good guy. What books are you reading right now? What books do you wish you were working on besides any creator-owned stuff? Creator-owned stuff right now that's been my singular focus. I don't have any desire to work on any mainstream books or any books that are outside of my creator-owned, only because I don't believe in anything that's out there. Nothing really truly excites me that's out in the mainstream. Yeah, and it's a little tragic, but I'm like, a lot of the vitriol that's happening online, a lot of the negative criticism when it comes to, at least let's compartmentalize, a lot of the criticism that's coming from creators looking at mainstream comics and saying like, how come you're not, I just saw the thing that happened during July 4th. And did you read that for Captain America, Mike? We can talk about that.
Oh my God, I fucking hated it. I went nuts.
Really depressing. Really, really depressing.
Captain America.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. There's a potential there in which, a good writer might be able to set that up because that's the presso version of him, and then like really as the whatever the series is called, like Captain Americas of the world, I don't even fucking remember. Like, point is, it may be an opportunity that you set that up, that he doesn't believe in the thing anymore, and then by meeting all of these people who's come to inspire, who admire him, he sort of like reinvigorates in believing in the thing, believing in the stewardship of being Captain America. But like in like alone as a standalone concept, fucking depressing, Anyway, my point is, anytime that a professional looks at that, or like an artist that's on the outside looking in at Marvel, at DC, at mainstream, or just comics in general, and they have a negative reaction, a critical reaction to whatever it is being published, it comes from, at least maybe this is naive, maybe this is way too optimistic, but I think it comes from a place of like, they really do care about that thing. They really love it, They want that thing to do well, obviously. But that's where I draw the line in regards to me being overly critical. Where I'm like, I look at something, let's say that Captain America thing, I'm like, you know what? If I can do better than that, I'll just go do it on my own. Why am I going to sit here and burn whatever energy that I'm burning or being overly critical over something that ultimately doesn't belong to me, right? If I have an
Yeah, that's fair.
opinion, I'm just going to go do it. Like I'll do it for myself. So it is to say that I don't read any mainstream stuff because it's exhausting being disappointed that much.
Yeah. You know what, man? Like I just watched The Winter Soldier,
Yes.
and it's been a few years since I watched it, and I want to see if it holds up, and it
Yeah.
still holds up. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
it's not nearly as impactful the second time around because of
Sure.
all the twists and turns. Are kind of like spoiled, right? So, like
Sure.
the Hydra being a secret, Nick
Yeah.
Fury still being alive, yada yada
Yeah.
yada. But you do see there is one scene where Cap very could have. This is like right after that famous elevator scene, right where it's
Yep.
finally been like something has gone horribly wrong, and then he meets Arnim Zola, the AI version,
Yep.
and then it's official. Arnim Zola is like, "You're a fucking fraud. It's been Hydra the whole time."
Right.
And then at that point in Cap's character's arc throughout the story, that is where he's at his lowest, right? It's all been a sham. Bucky's dead, or to his knowledge, right? He's been frozen in ice. He saved the world, but at the end, Hydra survived.
Yes.
So it could have all been for naught, but it
Yeah.
wasn't. He didn't lose hope. He didn't despair. He didn't fall to woe is me. Matter of fact, Black Widow's like, "Are you okay?" And he basically says, "Yeah." Because you know why? Because he's fucking Captain. He didn't have to explain it either. Because he's fucking Captain America.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
you get it. And
Yeah.
like, they could have written that. It could have been compelling, but
Yeah.
they didn't have to.
Yeah.
Like to like then you get done watching this movie, you're like, yeah, and then you fucking it's 4th of July and you pick up Captain America, and then Captain America's like, the American dream isn't real, it's all a sham. It's so bad. Oh my god. And then the subtle hints of communism too. It's like, no, the perfect dream is one that's shared by the people. It's like, oh my god, dude. I'm like, dude, writer, why don't you just draw yourself instead of Captain America? Just
Sure.
draw yourself saying this, lecturing the audience instead.
Look, yeah, I feel the same kind of passion as you do to go like, oh, that feels really weird. That reads really weird. So it's a couple things. One of the things I end up focusing on. Oh, by the way, before I forget, hello, Eddie Winkler. How are you? I was reading Eddie Winkler's. Eddie Winkler is the man behind a book called Sovereign Wolf, whose colorist for that book is the same colorist for ATHENA, right?
Hey,
That's where I saw Giuliano's colors first on an ad on a piece of advertisement for Sovereign Wolf, and I was like, what the fuck? That is so freaking good. And I said, who colored that? And so there you go. There's Jules right now in chat, right? I saw Jules' artwork for the first time, and I was like, "Jeez, man, what the hell? He's so goddamn good," And I reached out to him. Thankfully, Jules made room for me on his schedule, and here we are now. Anyway, so it's one of. By the way, hello to both to Eddie and also to Jules. But I said this earlier. I'm like, I saw Eddie's body language on a chat in regards to the whole Meyer thing, releasing one more book before he's fulfilled all of his campaigns, one of which happens to be like, a year late. And it was sobering to see that body language, to go like the level of sort of like, man, like it just felt like a guy who had all the wind knocked out of his sails. You know what I mean, Mike? Like I was reading him being so genuinely disappointed of being in a situation in which he's so enthusiastic to back this creator, only to be like, what the heck? What's going on? Like this doesn't feel good, right? My heart broke for him is what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
anyway,
of course.
It's one of two things in regards to Captain America sitting there putting the fucking turtle wax shine on his shield, right? waxing fucking poetic, right? I always ask, especially when it comes to, like, this is in part my conversation with Giuliano anytime that we're looking over colors, right? Like sometimes what I love about Giuliano is he'll get experimental with colors. Like, what do you think of this, right? And part of the metric that I put that through, part of the filtering process that I put that through is, does this capture the thing that I want it to because I have an understanding of my audience, right? Yeah. Do you understand your audience? Because if you do, what you're saying is the audience for Captain America wants to read that fucking stupid shit that you just said. Do you know what I mean? Like what? Yeah. But what basically you're saying is, I'm writing to an audience that loves this introspective, borderline, social, broad, like on the fringes of talking about socialism, Captain America.
Yeah.
It's so fucking irresponsible, like.
Yeah, no, it is, because you're writing your version of what your version of Captain America, not what the people want, not the version that we all know and love,
or not even just like having an understanding of the character as people have come to understand him. I'm a proponent of like bringing something new, plus wanting, plus tenning something, but geez Louise, really, that's what you thought people would want to read? That's what you thought?
That's the conclusion of the story, right? Like after he goes on this journey, that's his takeaway, right? I'm assuming
no, that's the beginning. Back, right? I think that's the beginning.
Oh, that's the beginning. Is it?
Oh, wait, no, he has the shield, right? Does he lose it? I don't know.
There you go. I think the whole premise of it is that he lost the shield, and then he meets the United States of Diversity, Captain America style, and then he gets his shield at the end. Yeah. I could be mistaken though.
Yeah.
But that's the time frame. Because to your point, maybe it could have been like he lost his faith, and maybe that's because, listen, that's a classic superhero, for sure. Spider-Man walking away. And, it's it's classic for a reason. And then he finds his. I like the way you wrote it. Like he meets all these people who are inspired by him, and they in turn re-inspire him to take up the mantle again. Yeah, but that's not what happened.
I don't know. It was enough. It was enough for me to read that thing and go like, I have no interest in reading this book.
Oh,
right?
No.
Which is also the other tenet of you writing a Captain America book. It is to go and capture an audience, right? Not just to pay attention to the stewardship that is like, you are a steward of that IP, right? But also, as a writer, you want to go capture a brand new audience, not use this thing as your fucking voice box.
Mm-hmm. The one character that mimicked a very similar sentiment to Captain America that I could think of was, honestly, dude, it was the comedian in The Watchmen during those riots in the 70s with him and Night Owl.
Are you talking about that monologue that he did at the window?
Yeah.
Emo cat.
Yeah. So the comedian is beating the shit out of civilians during this riot in the 70s, and Night Owl was like, "What happened to the American dream?" And he's like, "It came true." You're looking at it,
right.
Firing tear gas into a crowd.
Right.
It's like, well, and that's the sentiment, dude.
Yeah.
Captain America. What the fuck?
Roll the fucking credits. You know what I mean? So here's the thing: we can sit here, and we talked about this yesterday. We can villainize. Or excuse me, we can vilify this writer, right? And say like, God, you missed the mark, right? But that guy didn't walk into the Marvel offices just claiming to write in Captain America, right? He has an editor.
Yes.
And that ultimately is the guy that I point to and then go like, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, is this
get past you?
Like, is this the direction that you want this to go into now? Do you believe that there's an audience for this? Do you believe that there's an opportunity to gain an audience based on this? Are you comfortable giving this to somebody who's never read Captain America before, right? Because this is what this initiative is, right? Is the United States of, how did you put it, Mike? The United States of Diversity?
That's what I called it, yeah.
Like, this is the, what do you call it? This is what this initiative is, right? Is to be able to hand this off to somebody and say, like, look how much more inclusive these titles can be, right? Are you comfortable giving this first issue to somebody and going like, yep, we're totally going to get an audience, a brand new audience that we've never had before? That's dumb, you know?
Yeah, especially if these people are coming off of the Marvel movies, which is by far where Captain America reaches his most notoriety in the last 10 years
Correct.
from those
Can you
movies.
imagine, because the
Yeah,
movies are just so much more successful than anything that comics is printing, right? Can you
yeah.
imagine seeing Captain America at the end of Endgame or whatever the heck it is, and people are like,
Oh my
"Whoa,
God. Yes.
whoa, that guy is great! Holy crap, that guy is amazing! He gave up
The courage,
everything, and
the bravery.
he's finally getting the thing back. You know, he's getting a piece of him back. I want to read more about that guy." And then you give him
Mm-hmm.
this thing and go like, good luck digging through this thing, you know?
Yeah, no, especially if you see that scene on the battlefield where it looks like he's the last man standing solo facing down an army.
Yeah.
And he gets up battered with his broken shield and
Yeah.
he ties the shield tight around his arm and marches into battle.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like you're like, yes, what's this guy about? Oh, this guy's crying about the
Yeah.
American dream being an
The
American
American
nightmare.
dream. Yeah, yeah. American dream being it's not for everybody, you know?
Yeah, it's a myth.
There's no fucking hope whatsoever. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, writer guy, that's great. I understand I understand what you're trying to do. Cool, you know, you got paid, right? Now I go to the editor.
Mm,
I go to the editor and I ask like, what are you doing?
yeah.
You know, you're responsible for understanding the trajectory of where this may go. What are your goals for this thing?
Yeah, what is the end game?
Yeah.
You know? Pun intended.
Tell me what you're trying to do.
Shoot.
Tell me what you're trying to do, and if it makes any sense, if it makes any sense to what I think you're trying, like if it leads to the thing that I think you're trying to do, which is go. And I think Bernard addressed this very briefly yesterday, which is looking for an opportunity or looking for those opportunistic spaces in which you can find a new audience. I'm on board, man. You know, hey, you think you have you know, an audience in an imaginary floating island in the sky, and you guys want to, you know, invest money into building that rocket ship so that you can go find that readership, I'm all for it. Go invest in that rocket ship, right?
Yes.
But if your point is you want to knock this captain, you know, this is how you lead with the conversation. This is like that, you know, you remember that movie Inside Out from Disney?
Yeah, of
From
course.
Disney Pixar. There was the emotion sadness. This is sadness. This is just like, oh, the world is broken and everything isn't
Yes.
right and the American dream is dead. I'll just lay here and I'm tired. Jesus.
Yeah.
There was no like I'm trying to like okay, so what I've read is those 3 pages, those really notorious 3 pages that made it out to the public. What I want to do is go back and read the entire book, and maybe by the end it actually goes like, but I've still got to be fucking Captain America, you know?
Yeah. Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe.
Eddie Winkler says, I've just accepted that the comic world, amongst other things, is upside down. So I'll just walk on my hands until things change. Good night, Eddie. Hang on, I've
Yeah,
got to
good
take
night,
a quick pee break, Eric.
Good night, good night, good night. Yeah,
I'll be
sure.
right back.
Get to it. Atomic Bulldog, how are you? Good evening. Thank you for being here, man. I don't particularly care to spend that much energy talking about what's broken, because I don't think that it's all that productive. But really, it comes from a place of like, what is going on? That frustration comes from a place of like, it comes from a place of not being informed enough for it to make sense, right? So it's like somebody who only gives you part of the information, and it becomes very, very frustrating because you're trying to fill in all the gaps on your own to have it make sense. And when nothing is making sense, that's when the frustration comes. I've heard plenty of people say, and I think there was somebody who was once a consistent visitor to the chat that says like, you know, if it's not for you, you shouldn't have to buy. You shouldn't buy it. I'm like, okay, We'll see how long that can continue. Let's see how long, what an amazing business model that may be. Because technically it still needs to have an audience, right? Technically you still want people to buy it, right? And how many more of those are you going to want to print? How many of those are you motivated enough to print? Until you finally learn your lesson where it's like, there's no audience for this. I was once talking to Perch on his channel about it, that I'm convinced that the end goal is no longer selling books. The end goal is no longer... I was just saying, I was talking to Perch about this on his channel, that I'm convinced that the end goal is no longer selling the books. Because some people make the argument of like, hey man, if it's not for you, then you shouldn't have to, then don't buy it. And I'm like, that's absolutely true. I believe in that 100%. If this product, it doesn't suit the thing that I'm looking for, why am I spending any amount of time, burning any amount of energy even addressing it? But a part of me goes like, so how much longer do you think you can keep doing the thing that doesn't sell well, right? Because again, we had this similar conversation with Bernard yesterday, where it's like, you know, yeah, sure, one of the metrics, it doesn't have to always be about sales. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be about that. And as far as like what makes for a successful book, but, and I hate saying that shit, but it's because of sales that a book will continue to perpetuate itself to make a second issue and a third issue and a fourth issue, right? When it doesn't sell, right? So you can't just, it's sure you can say that the sales of a book isn't the only reason why something should be made, but it does play a very huge factor in it for it to continue to be made. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because, well, the world doesn't run on goodwill and sunshine and rainbows.
No.
You have to sell some copies in order to keep making the book.
Anyway.
Yeah, it was a good conversation yesterday with Bernard.
Yeah, they want to break these icons, Superman and Captain America, to be dismantled. Captain Marvel is the icon they preserve, the socialist icons. I don't know if it's that simple. I think people are leveraging the conversations so that it seems like that. What's happening, at least from my perspective, is that they've chosen Captain Marvel as their proxy, right? When historically that's not been her character at all. But because people react so negatively / positively, they, and then we were talking about this yesterday, Mike, or just in general. I don't know if chat believes in this, okay? But people need villains.
Yes.
Right? People need villains, and when they found them, right? And this is on either side of the battle line, right? When people find a formidable sort of avatar for the things that people are villainizing, they double down on it rather than look at it more holistically to go like, oh, this doesn't make any sense for us to continue down this path. It really doesn't. But there's a level of arrogance that's happening there that makes me go like, why is that even necessary, right? Why continue down this path? Dan says, I think characters as old as Captain America are hard to tell stories that have never been told before. Each year challenges writers, editors to go further, especially if it makes news. Yes, I think that's very clear. I think it's very clear in like it's not just clear, but it's obviously plain, right? Like, it's so hard to write the new Superman story. It's so hard to write the new Batman story. And so to Dan's point, you almost need to sensationalize it so that it makes headlines, right? And If that's the
Mm.
plan, and if that's the plan, then mission accomplished. But what does that do to your base? You know, you want to go look for new readers as much as you possibly can, and that's why you do that sensationalized version of it so that it makes news. It brings awareness to people going like, whoa, what is that? Like, I want to learn more about Captain America because people are talking about it now, right? But then you go like, great, mission accomplished. You brought awareness to a title that's very difficult to infuse with anything new that hasn't been told historically. But then eventually you have to start looking at like, okay, did that stunt work? Is there retention? Is there a new audience? Is this the new audience that we're looking for? Are we getting the thing that we want? Because in doing that, in doing the whole, making news based on going further, as Dan put it, did we do anything to alienate the people who are already here? Right?
Yeah.
What did we do? What gains did we get, and what damages did we incur in trying to do that? Let me see. I missed something that. Hello, Eric McIntyre. How are you? More ATHENA is what the comic medium needs. I know that it's been super fun for me, Chauncey. So I'm incredibly passionate about not just obviously being critical over mainstream comic book stuff, because again, I try to limit the amount of energy that I spend on it, or like not just even talking about it, but even thinking about it. Rather than doing that, I'd rather focus on like, oh, I'm not getting that thing from wherever it was that I thought that I could be able to get it. I'll just shut up and go do something about it instead. Thank you for being here. Eric McIntyre, I think I already said hello. Frankfurt School, socialism is against idle entertainment. They absolutely are against comics and capitalist heroes mythos. I don't know enough information. I don't have enough data to be able to address that. And Dan said we also got to move books, so sensationalize. Yeah. Unfortunately, we've come into that space. Do you think, Mike, we're now in this sensationalized space because we're reaching a point of desperation?
Yeah, listen, man. When I look and I see the comic book industry's behavior of late, especially in regards to this kind of shoot yourself in the foot long-term but short-term gains, like for example, they're relaunching X-Men #1 with 26 variant covers. I think Pepe Larraz is on it. So like this constant like, all right, again with the variant covers for like the last 10 years now. Again with the relaunch after relaunch after relaunch, upping the price of comic books, and all of this seems like it's a scramble. It's a scramble to keep the revenue coming, but no matter what the cost, even though that this is slowly disenfranchising people. No, I don't know if that's the right word. Whatever. People are losing faith. It's just poor business practice.
Okay, first, we would have to agree that it is actually disenfranchising people or alienating people, or like if they keep doing it, right, and people keep buying it, then it's not really doing anything except encouraging them. You know what I'm saying? It's like you and I can both identify that it's poor practice, but they keep doing it because it seems to continuously be working. So I don't know if I would automatically agree that it is alienating as many people as you think it is.
I think
people are talking. Obviously, people are upset about it, but they're not doing anything to change their habits.
Well, I think when you look at the numbers, right? So I think they printed 30% less books. They made about the same amount of money, but they printed less books. So it seems like the best that the industry can do is stagnate. And then even within the comic book stores themselves, the numbers are still going down, as we all saw the Comic-Con numbers. So listen, I mean, perhaps that isn't the thing that's alienating the customer base even more so. You really can't pin that down in that with that level of specificity, because you don't know unless you're taking like surveys as
Right.
people, from comics buyers.
Right. I mean, you can
But to me,
complain all.
to
Go ahead.
me,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, no, to me, it's shitty to see,
Yeah.
but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. No. I mean, I'm there with you. Obviously, I completely believe that as a business model, as an exercise towards your customer base, your fan base, I don't think it's ideal, right? I think it's
Hmm.
the term predatory comes up an awful lot, and I believe in that in part, right? But ultimately, the market bears what it bears, right? Like if they're doing it and they keep relaunching number one and people keep investing in it because it is now some weird speculative, there's a speculative nature of people buying these books, then nothing is going to change, right?
Yeah,
Like, I hear so many
yeah,
people complain online, and then if you ask them, well, did you stock those books? Right? Because they're a comic book store, and naturally, that's their business. They need to be able to sell those issues in whatever capacity. And the answer is like, well, yeah, I stock those books, right? Because I need to be able to sell to my customers. I'm like, okay, so nothing changes, right?
yes, nothing. I
I
mean, as long
remember,
as everybody's
go ahead, dude.
no, go on.
I remember a long time ago, back when there was this podcast called Sidebar, right? The Sidebar podcast. Those are the guys I'm on top of a select group of people that I believe help to elevate my name and my body of work into a level of relevancy again. Back when I was doing my 90-minute sketches on my Blogger, back when Blogger was a thing. Anyway, I
Hmm.
remember they had this was when New York Comic Con was a lot smaller, right? And Sidebar had a panel at New York Comic Con to which they invited me on, along with Paulo Rivera. I think we were on a panel together. And
Cool.
somebody in the chat, yeah, it totally was. And somebody in chat, somebody in the audience asked, "Hey Eric, or hey panel, I want to get your opinion on why do you think mainstream publishers," and so this goes back years, imagine this, okay? They're like, why do you think mainstream publishers who are, why do you think, how was it? It wasn't covers. It was, oh, why is it that don't mainstream publishers don't learn? This was when books were shipping late, right? Why do you think mainstream publishers continuously put out their books late and don't learn their lesson? And I was pretty, what do you call it? I think I was pretty curt with the guy, but not in a way that was accusatory, although it may have come off that way. I said, because you keep buying their books, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no, it's true.
the only way you can make an impact, the only way you can help make a difference in regards to how to change the practices, the business practices, and just the general practices of an industry is to hurt them in the way that they understand it the best.
Yes, hit them in the bottom line.
Yep. Stop
Oh
buying the
shit.
books that you don't care for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Eric, dude, look who it is in the chat, man. It's Comic
Ethan,
Artist Pro Secrets
Ethan's
himself.
Ethan's icon is it would probably have a check mark next to it. Does it have a check mark next to it on stream?
Hang on, I got Bernie in my chat. He just rated me, so I'm just gonna mute myself for like a second,
Yep.
and I'll be right back.
Yep. I can't see that check mark using the program that I'm using to stream. So forgive me. Like, I'm literally looking at a third party program that doesn't have that check mark icon. But if it is, Ethan, hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your company. I hope you're doing well. Congratulations on Dale. Congratulations on your publishing venture. I'm incredibly proud of you, man. I'm also, and I don't say this lightly. I'm incredibly jealous but you hold your business acumen is something that is at the top shelf. So thank you for setting an example. Appreciate that. What were we talking about before we got to, so my point was we can continue to talk about why certain business practices are reinforced, and I genuinely believe it has a lot to do with not showing them in the way that impacts them where they would listen. So we can continue to say like, oh man, why are they doing like 20 some odd covers for this, 20 some odd covers for an X-Men book? Talk about predatory. Because somebody will buy it. They won't change their mind until one day they go like, well, we have 27 covers and we're only ever able to move, and this is extreme and this is probably bad comedy, like we're only able to move like five units. That's when they're like, we better do something else because this shit ain't working anymore, you know? Am I caught up to everyone? On my screen, there's a check mark. Good. I remember, where did I see it? Where somebody was claiming that Ethan was in their chat, and it was like some doppelganger account. So forgive if I'm hesitant to go like, hey, how you doing, fake guy? I would love to hear how EVS does his character writing. Atrocious Sinestro, Cyberfrog. I mean, talk about making villains and heroes and flaws. I belong at All Caps Comics. That's a very kind invitation. Thank you so much, man. Toy Galaxy Dan is in here. Yes, he is. Yes, he absolutely is. In talking about character development, right? So one of the key things that I'd come to, I've read like 3 or 4 different mainstream books, and part of me, I'm reading the book. Like for instance, I just read, just to go over it because I was talking to Bernard about it yesterday. I was reading Children of the Atom, and a lot of the character development depends on the cachet of a pre-existing IP, and so a lot of the heavy lifting. And what I mean by that is like this. Like, you introduce brand new characters, and the only way you can give, the way that you leverage, the way you infuse them with development and importance is by leveraging pre-existing characters within that universe. So I don't know if it holds that much weight, because you're sitting there going like, you want me to care about these characters, but only because it's reflected through the eyeballs and the lens of with the cachet of pre-existing characters. Like, most of the time I wouldn't care about this shit, right? Make me care about your protagonists. Make me care about these brand new guys by giving them not necessarily relatable flaws, but understandable flaws, understandable characteristic traits, you know, that would make me sympathetic. Not just because, the X-Men think that they're cool, but because I genuinely care about them as people. And I don't care who they are, right? You can have an entire cast full of diversity. Ultimately, I don't care. It's how you develop your characters to become more than just one-dimensional, which is, I think sometimes, not all the time, and not necessarily in this case, it becomes about identity right up front. And I'm like, is that what you do? Is that how you build character? Is identity first? It's so heartbreaking.
Okay, I'm back.
It's so heartbreaking. I'm just talking about like developing character by leveraging legacy. You know what I mean? You know what I mean by that, Mike? Which is like, I'm reading a book and I go like, the only reason I even have an inkling of why these characters are sympathetic, important, whatever it is that you're trying to make me feel, is because you're leveraging the X-Men, you know? Right. Not necessarily because these things can, not necessarily because these new characters can stand up on their own, but because you're leveraging the X-Men. And I don't know if that's...
that they were...
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, or that the emotion was earned in any way.
Yeah. So,
Dude,
and I don't know if that, and I don't know if that's the right step. Make me understand why I should care about them, right? Give me an insight, and this is unfair, right? This is overly simplistic on my part, and I completely admit to it, which is sometimes when your natural tendency is to make it, you care about this because of identity. I'm like, oh, no, that's not. That's I don't believe in that, because the X-Men, the original, right? They didn't lead with that identity, right? They have just
oh,
as much right to the approximation of that identity as they came out as characters, but I understood them. I related to them. And that's why I didn't need, I didn't need that identity first concept. Their plight was they were being
dude.
persecuted because of these particular. That was the analogy for it.
Yeah.
You know.
We all know who it was based on, right? We all know
Sure.
that, it's any comic book nerd worth their salt knows exactly who Professor X and Magneto were based off of in real
Sure.
life. However, it was done subtly. It was done tactfully. They didn't beat you over the fucking head with it, which
Sure.
honestly, listen, man, it didn't become a lecture because there's no nuance in that, man. Because the beauty of it was, which oh my God, it makes me want to talk about something else. The beauty of the X-Men is that they could be anyone who feels other.
Yeah.
So it could be gay, it could be trans, it could be black, it could be Jewish, it could be whatever, man. Maybe you're just maybe you're just a weirdo,
Yeah.
and
Just
people don't like you.
a societal outlier, effectively, right?
Yes, exactly, and that's the beauty of it. Dude, Eric, did you see the film Luca, the Pixar film?
No, I haven't yet. Is it done well?
It is done well. It's a beautiful film, and it's about a boy who's a fish man. He's a merman, and
Yeah.
but the magic is when he goes on land, he magically turns into a boy. But whenever he gets wet, he turns into a fish monster. And guess what? The village that he's near hates fish monsters.
It's
So
fucking
obviously, it could be
Splash.
an allegory for, yeah, it could be an allegory for perhaps he's gay, or perhaps he's, because eventually, guess what? The village, surprise, the boy who's secretly a fish boy. It comes out that he's a fish boy, like anybody didn't see that coming, and then therein lies the movie, right? But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
his fishiness is obviously an allegory for something being other, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
similar with
Mm-hmm.
the X,
Mm-hmm.
and the people who find him endearing and love him despite of his otherness, right? There's the magic
Yes.
and there's the beauty. But you know
Yes.
what some lunatics on the internet were like? They're like, why wasn't he gay? Why wasn't he gay? And it's like, is it not enough that like the allegory, the analogy isn't enough. They needed to be 100% this. He must be this in order for it to work. And it's fucking gross, man. I'm very annoyed.
Holy crap. Did somebody really say why wasn't he gay?
Yes, 100%. 1000%. I think it
Holy
was a
shit.
Polygon article, or it was some website like that.
So it wasn't enough that this character was representative of multiple nuances of otherism,
Yeah.
It must be heavy-handed and directly delivered exactly as they needed.
Yeah. It's so which is another point where it's for some people, even if you do have noble intentions of being being diverse and inclusive in whatever property that you're managing,
Yeah.
or media that you're creating, some people are just never satisfied.
Right.
Look at Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Sure.
That guy,
Oh,
the guy who made
I
Hamilton,
feel
man.
I feel
Guy who's
so
like-
bad for that cat. I feel
That
so
guy was
bad
like,
for that guy.
Founding fathers are going to be black and Hispanic, and they're going to be rapping, and it's going to be patriotic and fun. And they're like, and he's like, all right, now I'm doing Into the Heights, and we got 4 main characters, and they're all Hispanic, and one of them is American black man. And they said, it's not diverse enough. They said, oh, that's right. Oh, and one of the female leads is also, she's Latina and she's black. But she wasn't dark enough. Her skin wasn't dark enough, because so she's quote unquote white passing, not dark enough. And it's like, what the fuck, man? What is
Yeah.
wrong with you?
Yeah, I
What
remember
the hell?
that.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean when it's an ever Like it's a forever moving line of accomplishment, right? What
Yeah.
does the end game look like? Right? And I'm saying that literally from a position of like a person of color. Where I'm like, where do you want this to go? You know, where's
You and I
your
are a couple of marmots, man.
yeah,
A couple of
like
white dudes chatting. I mean,
right.
I'm
Where
like
did
ambiguously ethnic, but you know, I've been
in
called names, dude.
yeah. Yeah. I'm sitting there going like where does it what does the perfect finish look like to you? You know what I mean?
I think you're right. The goalpost is ever moving.
Yes.
And with an ever moving goalpost there is no perfect. Because whatever you put out is not gonna be enough.
That's a perfect fucking t-shirt. There is no perfect. Let's do it, man.
Let's make them.
Let's do your fucking
Andrew Watt says yes. They had to make a statement to clarify the two boys in the movie weren't gay. Do you remember when this is a few weeks back when the Falcon and Winter Soldier was airing?
yeah.
And people were like, "There's a lot of gay undertones in the Falcon and Winter Soldier between Bucky and Sam." And they asked the actor whose name escapes me,
Sebastian Stan.
the actor that plays no, not Sebastian Stan,
Anthony
the other
Mackie.
guy. Anthony Mackie, thank you. So they asked Anthony Mackie, like, "Oh, so people online are shipping you and Sebastian Stan, you and Bucky," and then Anthony Mackie was like, "No. They're just boys, like
Yeah.
we're just friends."
Yeah.
And people were upset.
Why?
People were like, "No, because they're not gay." Like that's because and then they get accused of queer baiting,
What?
which apparently is queer baiting is apparently when quote unquote, you make it seem like your characters might be gay, but they're not. But they didn't do that. They were just friends. It's like, people are so crazy, man. People are so crazy, man. And
This
then
freaking gives me a headache, dude. Gives me a freaking
the worst
headache.
part is they get catered to, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The loudest, craziest voices on social media get catered to, and it's embarrassing.
The 12%, the 15%, the 10% of society. Andrew Wyatt says, yes, my old literature professor called that the horror movie rule. If you don't care if they die, then the character hasn't connected with anyone. Yeah, and it's not to say if you have an ensemble cast, you know how hard it is to make people care about each and every single one of your characters. And I ran into that with ATHENA, where I'm like, there's 3 characters in the background who ultimately, to that rule, if we're to use what Andrew Wyatt was talking about right now, there's 3 characters in the ATHENA team where you go like, I don't know, man, I haven't developed them enough, right? But I'd come to the realization that I can't develop them, at least not right now. I just need to give them. You just need to have an understanding of their character, right? Their personalities, because it's a fucking ensemble cast, right? There's a ton of different people on each team. There's no way I can spend 6 pages for you to understand wholly who this person is. It would actually be detrimental to the narrative if I took the time out to do it. And more importantly, it's 6 issues. There's just no room to do it. My attitude then is like to say, okay, let me just give you enough to know, to at the very least hear in your head how these people are, right? Like, yes, it's not going to be comprehensive. Yes, no, it's not going to be comprehensive. No, it's not going to be the totality of who they are. But for the time being, here's what you get, right? So it's like, that first episode of Lost?
Yeah. Oh my God. Legendary.
Right.
Legendary pilot.
Right. So you do the first, you have an understanding of like, okay, here are going to be like the main players, the main chess pieces, right? And then there's all these other people that may or may not come in episodically that feel like there should be somebody in the first episode. They feel like they should be somebody important because you're cutting to a slow motion of Locke, you're cutting to a slow motion of the Korean couple, you're cutting to a slow motion of Sawyer. Somewhere down the line you're going to focus on these people, but just right now, this first episode, or at least the first 3 episodes, there's no way to do everybody, right? So I think I've sort of gone into that space, which is like, yeah, this person could probably die and nobody would care, but I have plans for them. I just can't do it in the first 3 issues, the first 6 or the first 5 issues. Andrew Wyatt says Magneto wasn't Malcolm X. What's crazy is that if you said Malcolm's beliefs today, you'd think that was a right-winger. Yes, they had to make a statement to clarify the two boys in the movie weren't gay. Right. Holy crap, man.
Yeah, man, we're living in wild times.
When Atomic Bulldog says, when everyone is non-binary with gray skin and big black eyes, right? Andrew White says, it's like pressuring to have them make softcore porn fantasies. Yeesh. What's the end goal? A few years back, I saw, especially on Putin's Minister of Communications, basically his strategy was to create uncertainty and division at the desired target. Maybe it's that. I don't know. I'm way too. I'm not smart enough to understand. I always ask though, like to each individual who leverages the conversation in the similar fashion as Mike is talking about, right? I go like, okay, but what's the end goal? What's the end goal? You know, what do you want to do with any and all of that? Teddy says people want themselves reflected in stories so that they can lose themselves as straight fans have for decades, but using Twitter to force things in a show between characters that isn't there is nuts. Man, there's so many things you could address with that. It's not even a part of me is like, I don't even think that it's a conversation anymore, especially in the examples that you use, Mike. It's not even a conversation anymore about why aren't they? Or excuse me, why aren't they? It's more of a conversation of where they should be. You know what I mean?
Yes.
What a weird conversation that we're having.
It is. You know, you want to touch on what you, myself, and Bernard talked about yesterday in regards to Teddy. Teddy mentions that people want to see themselves reflected in the stories, they can lose themselves. Straight fans have for decades. I gotta say, I really disagree with that, and I think we were pretty upfront, you and I, yesterday with Bernard, respectfully.
Yeah.
Bernard is an Asian creator, and he has for decades now. He's promoted Asian diversity in his books.
For sure.
He's requested.
Yeah.
And that's his prerogative. That's his ask. I have no issue with that. But his goal is the reason behind that, right? To circle back to what Eric said, what's the end goal? Why do you do this? And Bernard was straightforward. Eric said, is this for fun? Do you do this? Yes, Bernard Chang. Do you do this because it's fun to draw? And Bernard said, because learning to draw here, the default is a white face.
The default.
That
right.
Bernard, it's Bernard's responsibility to be inclusive of Asian people in his books.
He's taken it upon himself to make it his responsibility.
Yes, there you go.
Right.
And this all stems from him being young and not seeing any representation when he was growing up. And I have to say that I couldn't feel more opposite to that.
Yeah.
I think I feel the exact opposite on the spectrum.
Yep. I grew up in the same. You're younger than I am, Mike, so I think Bernard and I are closer in age, right? Like I grew up as an immigrant coming to the United States of America in the mid '80s, you know. And at no point in my upbringing, keep in mind, geographically, he and I grew up in different parts of the United States, you know? So that has I believe, a profound impact on how we view our who we are as people, in regards to the society that we're living in. At no point did I look at, I'm trying to think of the things that I used to look at. Okay, something as simple as G.I. Joe, right? Which, by the way, has a pretty much a diverse cast, Like, at no point did I look at Duke, who I thought was like the fucking coolest guy in the world, or whatever it is. I'd look at Flint. I'd look at, Optimus Prime doesn't count because he's a fucking robot. But I didn't look at the cartoons that I loved as a kid, predominantly white characters doing cool ass shit, and thought to myself like, man, that would be so cool if I saw a version of me in there. because I was already saying to myself, that is really fucking cool. I see a version of me in there. Those are aspirational heroes. Like I didn't look at He-Man and go like, fuck man, I can't. Oh, I'm so fucking sick of seeing one more blonde person on the goddamn TV screen.
Why isn't Filipino? God damn it.
Why couldn't he be more Filipino? You know, and I'm like, no, I didn't see him that way. Right. I didn't. Oh, here's perfect example. Like I did not look at Christopher Reeves as Superman and think to myself, fuck, I don't think I you know, that's awesome and everything, but man, I really wish he was more, you know, more like me. It's like, no,
why isn't he speaking Tagalog?
I did not once think that. But again, there are so many things that inform my worldview that diverge from where Bernard and you know, not to pick on Bernard specifically, but just generally of the people who go, I must see myself exactly, or that hero must represent me exactly as I see myself, rather than going, that is an aspirational concept in which I can also exist and inhabit, right? There's no barricade for me to want to be as cool as Superman and as G.I. Joe and as all the other heroes that are being presented to me.
Yeah, no, I gotta be honest, man. As a kid watching the X-Men or Spider, you know, I'd come home and, you know, I grew up in the 90s, so, you know, it was like Spider-Man, X-Men, it was like the stuff that was on Fox, the kid stuff. It never, at one point, Peter Parker's whiteness never stopped me from imagining as a boy I couldn't one day swing through the skyline of Manhattan.
For sure.
It was a non-issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure there's individuals out there that have a term for what you and I are going through right now, which is like, you know what
Delusions.
I mean? Like delusional, but obviously more like more finger pointy. You know what I mean? Well, that's because you've been brainwashed into thinking blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, man.
Oh God.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, we're I don't know, whatever the fucking version of I don't know, Uncle Tom is, maybe.
Yeah. I don't even know. I can't even begin to understand. So, but I always ask, like, what is the value of that? Why is it important? I remember in that conversation where he said, you know, it was amazing to him to see. Remember, he used Michael Chang as an Asian tennis player. An Asian tennis player. I think was it the U.S. Open or the French Open? Right back when Michael Chang was like this force to be reckoned with in that sport, right? Where you had never historically seen him before, or seen an Asian person before. So the media wasn't as heavy-handed as they are now, but they said like, oh, how does it feel to be the first, you know, Asian American to be in this space, right? Or the professional skater. I remember Christina Yamaguchi being like really elevated into that space of like, whoa, what a great representative of an Asian American, you know. But at no point did I hone in on that. And again, it's just maybe my upbringing, but at no point did I hone in on the Asian part, right? I looked at the American part, you know. I go like, oh, holy crap, we get to be represented well in a tournament, in a contest that we had never had very good representation in, us as a nation, as a people, you know. Like I want to see that guy win because he's American, you know. Like I'm cheering for the United States women's soccer team to dominate, not exclusively because of whatever it is that they find in their representation group, but because the U.S. is finally doing well in soccer, where in its history it's never done well in that space. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Like we've sucked historically in soccer, so here we are going in there and destroying teams, or at least, you know, performing at a level and a stage. So I don't know. It's never been a guiding principle for me to go like, yeah, there's an Asian person, or what do you call it, you know, or a Filipino person that I see myself in that person because they have the same face and the same skin color as me. I'm like, I've never put much value in it, but some people have.
Here, let's read the chat.
Yeah. Let me look really quick.
Yeah.
Andrew Wyatt says representative characters aren't allowed to be real. I can't connect with something that has zero emotional investment. Good point. I've yet to say. Andrew Wyatt says I've yet to see an authentic LGBT character with character flaws in comics. It's like my flaws is I care too much and I'm too famous, and I haven't read a mainstream comic enough times to say whether or not that's true, but I hope that's not true. Eric Weathers, hello, how you doing? Eric Weathers, you're about to get really, really busy soon, buddy. Really, really busy soon. But thank you so much for being here. For the people who don't know, Eric was kind enough to take on the lettering chores for Arc Athena. And then the reason why I say he's going to be very busy soon is because I'm about to hand off the script to him. The final script lock to him in a couple days, hopefully, and all the pages are coming right behind. Giuliano was in chat earlier, the colorist for the book, and he says he's going to be finishing everything by the middle of the month. So it's gonna be busy time. Ethan says, but then again, if the default, because of things like how to draw comics the Marvel way, is drawing white characters, taking the time to show more ethnicities is a good thing. Yes, the concept of taking your position and going like, hey, I can try something like this, right? Which, by the way, what he said rang true to me, right? The default is, when he's like, what did he use as an example? What did Bernie use as an example? Like when he was doing life drawing classes, right? When he was learning life drawing. And he was saying the majority of the models, in as far as their faces were concerned. That's why I had to hone in. Like I actually asked him. I'm like, wait a second. What you're saying is there is a fundamental difference in the way an Asian male's anatomy is different than a Caucasian male's anatomy. Because no, he said like facial features, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes total sense to me, right?
Yes.
But the way it was presented, or the way it can be presented, and I don't know if Bernie did this, but the way it can be presented is that there's something wrong. There's something inherently wrong with the default, right?
It did seem like that might have been the implication, and I don't want words in his mouth.
I don't either. But that's that. I walked away thinking like, is that what we're saying? That inherently there is something wrong with the default because it is, a Caucasian male, and I go like, huh. That's interesting to think about. But he did say something that I walked away with. I was like, oh, right, that is fundamentally off, which is if there is no efforts made to bring the default into question, right? To question the default. He used an example of actor friends of his in LA, right, going into these auditions that if it doesn't say in the call sheet, it can be, the side character or the background character can be Asian, blah, blah, blah. The casting directors wouldn't even consider you as a potential person that could audition for that role. And I was like, that's interesting, right?
Yes.
Unless somebody is being told, hey, this is okay to cast an Asian guy, a person of color, a minority, then they automatically, quote unquote, default into the white guy. I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it is. Listen, I think it is important to always question the default. And let's be honest, from a craft standpoint, it's honestly, if you're still learning anatomy and facial features, mix it up, man. Don't just keep drawing the same white man's face, white woman's face. Toss some Asian in there, some black people, maybe some Hispanics. Just and this is just from a strictly I'm not talking about D&I and all that stuff. I'm just talking about, hey, better your craft, man. If you're walking around the streets, especially here in a major city, you're gonna see it's gonna be like the like a United Colors of Benetton ad.
Sure. Okay, let me get back to chat. There's a lot of people talking. It's the ability to imagine yourself as something else is aspirational because you connect to it and can imagine doing those same things. Superman, Spider-Man, He-Man, right? I think another perspective is that creators want to see what that character would be if they were actually culturally different. There are several ways to think about it. Like if Wonder Woman's mom was Afro-Amazonian and whooped her ass anytime she talked back, injecting my own mom here. Okay, I get it. Sure. Sure, sure. That's valid. Definitely matters what you've experienced growing up in America. People represented as all aspects of humanity and not as tropes is important for stories and heroes in books. I agree with that too. On the flip side, Netflix race bending, sexuality, changing almost every property can be challenging to enjoy if you're a fan of the original material, for sure. I see that, but I feel like it depends on what you get from the material. It has to add something to the story or create a deeper narrative because of how the hero's experiences change. Yeah, yep, that's valid, 100%. If by changing whatever ethnicities, identity, preference allows you to tell a nuanced story with those characters, okay, I get it. I feel like sometimes it's done irresponsibly.
It is. Sometimes it's on. Sometimes it boils down to tokenism, man, which I feel like is counterproductive. You know, speaking of which,
Oh wait, JK
Eric, do you know
actually asked this. JK actually asked this earlier, which is, do you employ the hero's journey for your story? And the answer is in part. Yeah, if I understand the hero's journey correctly, the nuances of the hero's journey correctly, the answer is yes, in part. It's not as what do you call it? It doesn't adhere to it 100%, but yes, in part. What are you saying?
Domo stated in my chat. I don't know if you're familiar with
Hey,
Domo
I am.
DC before.
Yeah.
Uh, Not gonna lie, Static Shock was huge for me as a kid. I agree. When I watched Spider-Man, I had no problem seeing myself as Spider-Man. But over time, looking at the overall scope of heroes being white, I did get the feeling like, dang, black people can't be heroes. Why we always gotta die first in movies? The presentation and lack of representation kind of felt like media didn't care about me, says Domo.
Fair.
Yeah, listen, man, if that's your
Yeah.
takeaway,
Yeah, no, that's the what do you call it? That's the nuanced life experience that can't be accommodated for 100%. You know?
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what that felt. That's something that I can't relate to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never had that thought, but I'm not a black man living in America, you know, with all that entails.
Dan says, I think it's unrealistic to think that we can be a diverse nation, and in parentheses, increasingly more so, and continue to hold up the density of white male-centered stories forever into the future. Yes. Yes.
Well, that was something that I talked about with Eric in regards to the default being white. For many years, the default was white because this nation's kind of default was white. And like, yeah, sure, you know, I think that's obviously changing and is going to continue to do so.
Yeah.
But to this day, I think black people make up 12% of the population, Asian make up 8. Again, these numbers are changing, and eventually, you know, a few decades from now, things will be flipped, and white folk will be the minority.
For sure.
But you know, for since this country's inception until pretty close, this has been a white person's nation. So I think just demographically speaking, that made sense.
Sure.
It's changing though.
Yeah. Yeah, Domo's spot on in regards to, like, if you think about the history and the root of somebody like Static Shock, it took Dwayne McDuffie and a group of his people over there at Milestone to identify there's an opportunity space, right? And so when they made Static Shock, they knew, they had an understanding for that opportunity space as far as an audience is concerned. And by the way, that can take us down a really strange tangent of any time that I hear somebody go like, there haven't been any great black superheroes. And I go like, what?
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
Holy crap, you guys have such short-term memories, you know? Anyway, so I always want to make sure that, like, minorities have historically had representation in media. I always think about that because, like, you can sensationalize it and goes like, this is the first time we've ever seen a black superhero before, and you're like, that's not true. That's not true.
Yeah,
that's in recent times. That's what it is. But you know, you almost diminish people like Dwayne McDuffie and the work that those guys did in bringing forward really strong characters, really well-developed characters that aren't tokenized, that aren't like leveraging that aren't leveraging the equity of the history of Superman, you know, by turning him black. You know, Dwayne goes, I can fucking write that character, right? And did it independent of Superman, you know.
Yes.
Anyway. I'm indigenous, but every time Puma shows up, I cheer for Peter to kick his ass. Identify with Spider-Man's virtues more than Puma's race. There you go. Well done. It was like RoboCop reboot to me, not quite the same edge. Dwayne McDuffie's Justice League Unlimited movies were great. I worked with Dwayne on multiple projects, not the least of which Justice League Unlimited. We worked on Ben 10 together. Stand-up guy. It says, I was watching Monkey TV series, which an all-Asian cast in the 80s. The lie of we don't identify as people, they don't look like us, is fabricated. Yeah. Yeah, it's become so very important, and I don't disagree that it holds importance, but I want to understand. First of all, I want to make sure that we are not diminishing things that have happened previously and say like nothing ever existed like the way it's existing, you know, and therefore we have to rally to make them exist now. And I'm like,
right.
Are you sure? Can we at least be aware? Can we at least get data on whether or not the thing that you're saying is actually true, as opposed to something that's been sensationalized because you want people to rally around that concept? You want people to rally around a half truth or a whole untruth, you know? I'm sorry, Mike, I keep cutting you off.
No, sorry. I was reading the chat.
I hate this drawing. I fucking hate this drawing.
I definitely wondered why we kept dying in movies. I wasn't really pressed about black superheroes, to be honest, until Blade came out. I never really felt left out looking at white heroes not looking like me. I always imagined myself as the Hulk or Batman regardless, but seeing a hero acting like me was lit AF.
Yeah. There's a way, and I can't remember who I fucking stole this thing from, but like, there's a way. There's been the historic shorthand of drawing a guy like screaming at the top of his lungs, right? But like not really incorporating the way the lips are drawn. You know, we have these things that we picked up from an artistic like. Okay, so I saw this artist draw that, and I'm going to mimic it, and probably not with the same level of craft, but not really take a step back and go like, what's going on there? You know, like how does a mouth move? What are the other what are the other expressions of that mouth?
What's that mouth do?
Yeah. What that mouth do? And unironically, that kind of relates back to what we're talking right now, which is not to go to the default, right?
Yeah, nice strike. And yeah, especially to Dan's point, I think it's unrealistic to think that we could be in a diverse nation, increasingly more so, and continue to hold the density of white male-centered stories forever into the future. So I think, I had this conversation with Eric last night. I think because of the, you know, rapidly changing demographics in this nation, I think that's bound to happen. Yeah. You know, that's the future.
I'm bugged by the fact that I've been on for like an hour and 2 hours now, and I've yet to get past this fucking beard.
Did you wipe out your inks?
Yeah, because the underdrawing was poor. I was just, I was mindlessly ink. Actually, it was more like, oh, I can ink this and it'll look okay. I think this will look all right when I start inking. And I'm like, nope, that sucks. I need to have drawn that better.
Andrew Wyatt says icon movie greater than Black Superman movie.
Say again.
You know, oh,
Oh, Icon.
Andrew, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
icon.
yeah.
You know what? As a person who's unfamiliar with icon, but has heard interesting, compelling things, and I
Mm.
know it came up around the time from the Static Shock people, right? Milestone.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
It's Dennis
well,
Cowan and partly influenced by Dwayne McDuffie. Rest in peace.
yeah, no, I think that would be compelling, man. You had an interesting point about that, Eric. Uh, that by corporations not jumping on a pre-existing black character, or
Yeah.
even a black Superman,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Because
by them
what
not
you're accidentally saying is that if we were to leave this as Icon, nobody would care about it.
bingo.
And you understand how insulting that sounds, you know? If we were to just leave this on merits of the pre-existing character that was a black Superman, or that is not a, by not turning him into a by just leaving Superman white, not turning him into a black person, just left to his own devices, this would not do very well. And you're like,
That's
yeah,
exactly what they're saying.
yeah, that's because you haven't done enough work. What you want to do is take the concept of a Superman and the legacy behind that and say, okay, well, we've already done all of this work, and the only thing that we need to do now is, in order to make this, socially relevant, is to turn him black. And I go like, that is so cheap and lazy. So cheap and lazy. And it's right at the cusp of the definition of tokenization, Do you see how insulting that is?
Yeah. Yeah, let's just swap out let's take the RPG style color shader and just drop it down a few
Yeah,
notches
rather than
and call
actually
it.
investing in developing characters, who somebody in chat was like, it was saying how due to due to their race, due to their personal experiences, would have so much to bring to the table, story wise, narratively, right, character development wise. They had so much to bring to the table, but instead, let's just turn him black. It's ridiculous.
I think you said it perfectly when you called it cheap.
Yeah.
Domo says, "Yep, I don't like the whole turn heroes other ethnicity thing."
Yeah. It prevents actual development from happening. Now, I think we ended up talking about the reaction to people to Miles Morales, right, when he was released, right. There was also there was like public outcry, public vitriol, and like, oh, now you're just turning Spider-Man into into a black kid, right? Which is not true at all. I don't believe in that. I was there. Like, I read that comic book when it was coming out, So at no
Yes.
point did I go like, oh, this is just black Peter Parker. No. At no point did that come off that way. They invested in that character. They invested in that character, developed him to the point where he went and won a fucking Oscar, Because
Yeah,
he's
I really enjoyed this Spider-Verse version of Miles Morales.
Yeah, because there was no, there was no, what do you call it? There was no Black Aunt May. There was no, there was no, if memory serves me, if memory is serving me correctly, there was no point when Miles Morales said, like, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
No, not to my knowledge.
Nope, I don't remember that at all. Because that would be the equivalent of just like, oh, turning him into that skin color, right? They developed that character. They actually invested time, effort, energy, creativity into that character. Fast forward to now, and you're like, there you go. That's how that character works. Nuanced, unique to an actually fully developed, fully realized human being. Well written.
Yeah. Thomas's Miles and Kamala were the best ways to introduce more ethnicities to older franchises. They built brand new characters into their worlds rather than replacing what was there.
Yes.
Yeah, man, we had this conversation with Bernie when Axel Alonso decided that we're just gonna swap out all the legacy characters for new diverse versions and hope nobody doesn't no and hope fucking nobody leaves.
You
And then,
have
of
to
course,
understand
everybody.
why people react that so unfavorably to that exercise. You have to
Yeah.
understand why that is. And if we were to take a step back and look at it purely from a business perspective, that's right around the time the Avengers movie came out. You didn't understand that could potentially alienate, how that could alienate potential customers coming in and saying like, whoa, that was a fucking awesome movie. Let me go get more of Iron Man. And they come in and they're like, I don't know who this character is. I want that guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember working on the first Enter the Mandarin book, right? And my editor was two individuals, two amazing editors, Stephen Wacker and what the fuck, Tom Brennan. And I remember when I first started on that book, there was no how would you say it? There was no rush for me to finish Enter the Mandarin. Back when I was working on it, they were just like, Eric, take your time. That was right around the time that I was working an animation job. So there was no sort of like, Eric, there's got to be this deadline, and we're gonna hang it around your neck, and But they understood the value of me taking my time and drawing it the way I wanted to draw it. I wasn't going fast, not because I was slow, but because I had another job, right? And so, right around the time that Iron Man 1 came out, we're talking about the inaugural test case, like this is the first, like John Favreau, we're going to introduce Tony Stark to the world. This is unproven, this is untested, this is not the Marvel universe as we come to know it, where you just put the Marvel logo on it, it's going to make $1 gazillion. This is not Black Widow, where it's like, oh, that has a built-in audience, that has a built-in fan base, that has a bunch of built-in people who have a fervor for anything with a Marvel logo. This is the first one, right? But
Yes.
when that movie was about to come out and I hadn't finished Iron Man Enter the Mandarin, I got a call from Stephen Wacker. And he said, Eric, I need to light a fire under your ass. And I was like, why? And he said, and I remember this, he goes, because Iron Man is about to come out and this is a perfect opportunity to dovetail into the awareness of that movie for the awareness of our products. We want this trade paperback sitting on the shelves at Barnes and back when there was Barnes and Nobles and like all these bookstores, like we want the trade paperback for this book sitting on the shelves because it is going to be great to take some of that like awareness shrapnel, that's my term, right? Like awareness shrapnel as it bounces off of that movie and people are like, yo, we want to know more about Iron Man. And here's a brand new book being drawn, or there's a brand new miniseries that just came out in trade paperback. And I was like, oh, I was like, oh, that's how that fucking works,
Yes.
Do you
At least that's
not?
how it should.
Yeah, exactly. Do you not see the advantageous position that you could take when any and all of these movies, but instead you actively something inside of the editorial staff said, you know what else we can do on top of bringing a way that's brought awareness to our IP on the comic book level, we can also make it about diversity. And you're like, well, I guess, okay, let's try it. Fast forward to X amount of years, there's a ton of data that says, and I remember there was a story that was going around that in a Marvel distributors conference, somebody came out and said, hey, some of these books that we are trying aren't really working out all that well for us from a business/financial perspective. This may not be a good direction for us to move into. I might be overphrasing or underphrasing, right? But then there was a huge hubbub behind it. Well, I'm like, what? How dare you not do more of this thing that's not going to keep the lights on? And I was like, there you go. The moment that happened, the moment it became less about how to make sure that these things are viable from a business perspective, not exclusively. You know what I'm saying, Mike? I'm not saying that you only have to make it about the sales numbers and those metrics and how to keep the lights on and paying bills and paying your artists and playing. It shouldn't exclusively be about that, but there should have been strategy behind it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, there should have been strategy behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I mean, let's be honest. That mentality, it fell to the wayside. I don't know if I don't know if that mentality came down from on high, the one that the selling or not selling editors mentality, where whatever's happening in the most successful movie franchise of all time doesn't affect what we do in the comics, which I think was shockingly detrimental to the industry.
Yeah.
You know, where Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out. Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out. Oh, later, Domo. Thank you for swinging by, buddy. Appreciate it. Guardians of the Galaxy comes out.
Thank you so much, Dan. Have a great evening, or in your case, morning.
Later, Dan. Bye,
Thanks,
Dan.
man. Thanks for swinging by.
Yeah, the Guardians comes out. Most people don't know what the hell that is, but it turns out one of the best of the Marvel franchise. A great introduction to the new set of characters. Even comic book readers themselves maybe were aware of the team Guardians of the Galaxy, but had no real fucking idea of who they were. I know I sure didn't. And a moment like that, where they could have capitalized on it, there just wasn't.
Yeah.
And I remember I was looking around and I asked a few local comic book shop owners if people were picking up Guardians of the Galaxy, the comic. And the answer was no. In the summer where it was the most popular film, it was a film that followed Avengers. It was a film that, people saw a bunch, multiple times. I saw it multiple times in the theater. It was so fun. Not a book sold. It's the exact opposite of what happens in the anime and manga industry. People fall in love with an anime series and then they run to buy the manga because they need to see how it ends or they're curious about it. That just doesn't happen in comic books, and it's a shame because I feel like it might have. They've handled better.
This may go back to what you and I were talking about yesterday, which is like, at the end of the day, I don't ever point at the freelancer. I don't ever point at the talent. I don't point at the creatives. I point at leadership. Right? The example that I just gave were two of my editors saying, "Hey, at one point that was, your turnaround time, your delivery time was a bit more leisurely, but we see this as an opportunity and we need to leverage it." Right? So light the fire. You're going to deliver this, right? Because they saw opportunity, and that to me is an amazing example of how strategy based on, and by the way, that's just anecdotal, so who knows, right? But it is a strategy based on a leadership space in which they understood opportunity and they were going to pull the lever, There you go. That to me is the case for what the editorial staff used to be versus what the editorial staff, I think, has metamorphosed into.
Oof. Jeez. It's hard to imagine. It's hard for one outside to imagine where, honestly, I've said it before, we're either in the middle of the end of the, we're at the twilight of the Marvel Cinematic Universe being this superhero bubble, right? We all knew it was going to pop, between all the superhero TV stuff, all the superhero movies, and video games. It was going to, oversaturation was happening and the bubble was going to burst. And it was a good 10 years of just those numbers going up. And it might have ended with Endgame and Infinity War, which a beautiful ending. And now we're kind of in a, it's over. It might be. There's a very high probability that it's over.
You think so?
And listen, we're gonna see. We're gonna see what happens in Phase 4. But if this is the end, listen, a 10-year run, becoming the most successful movie franchise of all time from nothing, making billions of dollars, over 20 billion in however many movies that they produced. That is an amazing track record.
Sure.
And that the comic book industry has done nothing but lose money. It's fucking. You laugh because otherwise you'll cry because it's depressing. Because you're like, this was the time to shine. Yeah. This was our moment. This was it.
I've always wondered if that is a fair if that is a fair sort of statement to make, right? Like, are we assuming that an industry can experience the bonuses of the social awareness of a movie? Are we culturally in that space? Because the example that you gave earlier was that, when a manga when a anime comes out, right? Immediately people go and rush to see what the manga is all about, right? And that obviously that's true. I'd always want to know, like, but is that cultural? Is there something going on that side of the ocean in which they go like, whoa, we have a really great fervor in which we want to know more? Or, and here's a counter argument, like, okay, does the interest stop with Marvel movies stop just at the movies and at the movie theaters? You know what I mean? So to say, like, oh my gosh, this thing has flourished over 10 years, turned itself into the multi-billion-dollar juggernaut industry that it's become, and comics is still floundering, to make that connection might not necessarily be an accurate way of to the accurate perspective. Like, that's probably not how that works, like.
So you say maybe there was never a chance that could have happened.
Correct.
Even under the best the best of leadership.
Correct.
Maybe it's just not an American thing for that to happen.
Like, you'd hope that was true, but without being able to. I mean, I would hope, and this is just I don't know, right? I would hope that there's data out there that told the publishing group, like, we tried bringing awareness, we tried having whatever comic book stands or whatever it is that's at the movie theaters, and it just was not moving the needle at all. So it's not a viable game plan for us.
Yeah, no, listen. Without being in, like, those meetings or knowing if they ever even happened, it's impossible to say. All you could do is speculate.
Yep. Anime and Andrew Weiss says anime and manga walk hand in hand. DC has WB Animation, Marvel has Disney animators. They could easily go toe to toe with anime if they wanted to. That's the other thing that I was going to ask. Like, Disney values Marvel comics because of their catalog, but maybe not so much as a publishing venture. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Comics in Japan are much more integrated and have much more influence when it comes to marketing. American comics can't keep that because of constantly shifting pop culture, for sure. Comics need to find a way to be like YouTube, an inherent source of entertainment that presents content in a way that everyone can digest and access with the most minimal of effort. Yeah. Comics are overpriced for 22 pages, and limiting them to just comic book shops kills the access comics have to the masses. Sure. The manga difference is that arcs are finite. There are no reboots in manga/anime. That tells customers every issue matters. Huh. I never thought of it that way. That's interesting.
Yeah.
By the way, I still can't stand this drawing. I'm gonna be 3 or 4 times deep into fucking redrawing this guy, and I'm gonna give up sometime tonight. Actually, it's about time to turn back into a pumpkin, buddy.
Yeah, we've been at it.
Yeah. One more comment from Daryl Austin. I think it's the comics themselves. Sadly, I feel they need to be entirely digital on a single platform, partially animated to get the current audience. Emphasis on current audience. And on that note, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. If you're not already subscribed to my newsletter, please go to ericcanete.com/ arc-athena-info. In there, you can sign up. Your name, email, information will be tallied into our end of the month giveaway for a prototype statue of the main character from the miniseries Arc Athena. Once you are signed up for that newsletter, you will be able to get a bunch of stuff from behind the scenes to campaign launch and everything in between. So please do so and support our campaigns. It launches in the beginning of September for issue 1 of a 5-issue miniseries. If you're not following me on social media, please do so. You can find me on both Instagram and on Twitter. Twitter.com/Eric Canete, Instagram.com/Eric Canete. What else is there? If you're interested in getting original art from me, you can do that now at essentialsequential.com. Type in my name in the search bar. A bunch of my original artwork will pop up. If my art is not your cup of tea, you can find a bunch of different artists there too. So go visit that. Mike, please go follow my buddy Michael DiNicola. Instagram.com/Michael DiNicola, Twitter.com/Michael DiNicola. If you're not already following him on YouTube, please go do that now. YouTube.com/Michael DiNicola. Hit the subscribe button. Twitch.tv/Michael DiNicola. You can do that as well. Do me a favor, before you guys exit the room, can you please hit the thumbs up for this video? It could do a lot of good for me in as far as my long-term engagement is concerned. That'd be great. Hit that little thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, please do so. I think that's it, no?
Yeah, no. That was I always have a blast chatting with you.
Yeah.
About process, about comics.
Yeah. That's a ton of fun. We'll do this again next Tuesday. Yeah. Come back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. We'll find something a bit more positive to talk about this time. I feel like we fringed right on the negative. It made for interesting conversation, but too much of that sours the, I believe, at least it sours my brain, so I'll try not to stay in that headspace for too often. So, again, thank you for being here. Come back next week. We will talk to you later. Have a good night, everybody.
Good.
What's the button that I press so I can go pee? Okay, here it is.